Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by none other than the Gnosis King himself, Gnostic Informant. What is up, brother?
About to attain true gnosis right now.
About to attain true Gnosis. So let's do our little intro here and get this party started.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
Neal, what's up, brother?
Oh man, I'm excited to have a conversation with some people online right now about stuff I love to do, ancient mythology.
Look, you and me, we started this whole thing off. You were interviewing me at the time. You were into some woo-woo. I was in woo-woo, right? Kind of, going through our own little journey.
I'm still in the woo-woo.
Yeah. I'm just saying, though, the woo-woo becomes a little better. Okay, we get a little better at the woo-woo.
Yeah, you got to take the middle road. You got to add some rationality with the divination. You got to, Plato was onto something. The logos and the mind, the nous.
Right. I definitely wanted to spearhead this whole topic of why are we so focused and constantly enjoying, if you will, looking and hunting for myths. You could call us myth hunters, Gnostic informants. You can call us myth visionaries. You can call us whatever you want. But why are we so into this? And I'd like to give my take and then give your take. But just so people know, if you're tuning in right now, stay tuned because we're going to go down a deep James George Fraserist kind of rabbit hole. And not that we're trying to genetically connect everything that you're going to hear us say. But once you see a claim over here in Christianity or Judaism or whatever, and then you see 10 other ones, I don't care what any Bible scholar has to tell you about this, okay? You might want to just, I don't know, broaden the perspective of who you listen to when you study.
If you get into a place where you feel like you're in the Twilight Zone when you're hearing some New Testament scholar, just to keep it real, it's New Testament scholar out there that'll say something objectively, like an objective statement, X equals Y or something, right? And from reading the primary sources with your very own eyes, using the best translations out there, even using lobes where you can look at both sides, and this for sure, that what they're saying is the exact opposite. It makes you go, what are we in an alternate reality right now? We're gonna show examples of that.
Well, it even adding to what you just said is like, it's not like we alone went, oh, here, primary source. Oh, wow. That seems to say what that person said. It's not, paralleling or having any type of genre or categorical comparison. And then guess what? We open up another book and we go, hold on. Oh, there's an expert who actually
exactly
that expert.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, and then it gets even worse when we're going, well, the primary sources can be misleading sometimes. There could be whatever
nuance.
But then you find an academic who goes, no, you're seeing exactly that, and this is exact, and you're saying there's like two different worlds happening.
And it's not even one academic; it's often multiple. But guess what? It might be 3 to 5 academics, and then hundreds are in the mainstream going, no. And we are going, I'm sorry, I disagree with the hundreds over here. And look at these people who are seeing this, looking at text. And if I ask, because I've interviewed the hundreds, I've talked to the hundreds, and I go, hey, hundreds, I'm not naming names. Hey, hundreds, what do you think about this? And they go, I've never read that. Yeah. Oh, you've never really looked into that, but it's a trend to just go, nah, that has nothing to do with this. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
And obviously what we're saying, these aren't like every single topic. We're not saying everything like we're better than anybody or anything. I'm saying
No.
I'm a student to the teachers that are out there. However, in some cases, like you can be okay, here's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry. Take me a minute to think of how I want to say this. Sometimes you have a consensus that might be skewed. Now, this is I'm not trying to get into like some Graham Hancock. They're all wrong and I'm right because I'm some random amateur over here doing armchair archaeology. No. What I mean by this is I'm talking about actual when you have quality over quantity. Okay, let me explain. You might have 20 New Testament PhDs, theology PhDs, maybe even some of them are classicists, right? And they have their own particular thing that they study. So they're studying the parallel, or they're studying like the synoptics problem or something. Or another one is doing textual criticism of the New Testament. Another one's doing Dead Sea Scrolls. Another one's doing Hebrew Old Testament Hebrew idioms. And they all come together and they have a consensus on a subject that they're not all studying, but they all have a consensus on this one subject. And then there's a few scholars, 20 versus 3 maybe. So you have 20 people saying one thing and 3 people saying the exact opposite. But then you look at those 3 people, and these 3 people, their PhDs, their expertise are in this subject alone.
Right.
So this is why it took me a while to think of how to say this, because I'm not trying to sound like a Graham Hancock, like I'm right and they're all wrong.
Right.
But there are certain scholars who are Paula Carente. I'm about to bring up her book. She's in this book, Redefining Dionysus. This is published not too long ago. She studies, her particular PhD is on Fraser and Dying and Rising Gods, and she's an anthropologist. She studies the science of religion. That's her field.
And she's a classicist. Yeah.
But when we're talking about a subject that's her field, I want to know what she's got to say. I don't want to know what some guy who studies, the cave in Israel. Well, he doesn't know about Dionysus. I don't care what he thinks.
Right.
But those people add to the consensus. So sometimes it looks like it's all skewed in one direction, when really the heavy weight, the really good quality research in these particular fields are saying something different. So yeah, we're going to get it. I'm going to back up what I'm saying in a few minutes.
To echo Dr. M. David Little's book, Jesus Deus, which me and you both read, and he did a really good job, I think, in introducing this dichotomy, using Christianity as the example, between Jewish and Greek or Hellenistic, pagan, right? And he's like, hold on, that dichotomy has been being debunked. For centuries now, you've had people try to split them as if they're complete opposites. And in this book, he's quoting scholars, but he's pointing out, sorry, you're dealing with a Hellenistic Jewish movement, which means you're going to get philosophy, you're going to get lingo, mythology, you're going to get all these things within the Christian movement. And the whole book is about Jesus being portrayed as a Mediterranean demigod, like Heracles, like Asclepius, like these other gods. So when you read these texts from the typical, and I say the typical as in they came out of a seminarian kind of thing. They kind of have that conservative, typical, well, everything in the New Testament must be Jewish, and you cannot go outside of that bubble.
Right.
It gets me in trouble, like my last documentary.
And it's what's so ironic about that statement is that when we look at what Jews are doing in the 2nd century BC, 1st century BC, 1st century CE, they're adopting culture from the Greeks and from the Egyptians and from the whoever, from the Cyprians right on the island right next to them, from the Syrians, right? They're not just in a bubble. So yeah, these are Jewish antecedents, yes, but those Jewish antecedents are also part of the broader Mediterranean world still. So we're back to square one again.
This is a great point. I was talking to Richard Miller yesterday about this. Before we get into mythic comparisons, and maybe I need to ask you just directly, but first things first, me and Richard Miller were talking about this, and you kind of have 2 ideas. Like, where did some of these concepts from Christianity come from? Because they're not in the Hebrew Bible, like many of them, right? Like baptizing into the deity and putting on immortality. Like, show me where that's in scripture. Like you might can show a Jew who goes into a Jordan River and like there's some phenomena that takes place where like the divine gives him a vision or something like that. Like, but he's not putting on immortality. There's a new context in which they're actually putting on the God or ingesting the deity. They're eating the God itself to become one in unity. And we were talking about this, and I said, well, look, for those, don't mind the blowers in the background. There's people out front blowing leaves.
I don't hear anything. You're good.
Okay. For
Got the
those
headphones on, so
good. For those who go, everything must have a Jewish, precedent, antecedent. It cannot have come out of anything beyond that. We were kind of flirting with this to try and make sense of it and go, okay, what happened centuries prior to the first century? I don't know. Alexander the Great came. The Ptolemies literally ran and ruled not only Egypt, but all of the Levant. I mean, up to the region of Phoenicia, okay? And everyone under their rule, and even further, everyone under the rule, according to Maccabees, was coerced to worship Dionysus and Zeus.
And the Seleucids, obviously.
Yeah, but Zeus and Dionysus were according to this propagandistic text of 3rd Maccabees, I think it's in 2nd Maccabees, they were coerced to be citizens, to worship and follow and even take a tattoo of some sort, it says in the text, of Dionysus.
Oh, Jason Maccabees, by the way, his name was Jesus. His name is Yeshua. He changed his name to Jason to sound more Greek.
Right.
He took the Pharisee party at the time and totally took it into a direction. They call themselves the Antiochians. The Antiochians were a Jewish party who had a high priest in power, right? In the time of the Maccabees, he was the brother of Onias, the famous Onias, the Messiah who got cut down in Daniel.
Yeah.
This is his brother who became the high priest. And what did he try to do when he was the high priest? He tried to take Judaism into the direction of Greek Hellenism. He built a gymnasium. He said, let's adopt Greek customs. That took place in Judea in the 160s, 150s, somewhere in that time period for a period of time. Now that people were pissed about it. Don't get me wrong; they didn't love it, but some did. And you got to think some of that culture might have got somewhat kept going. Like I don't think that movement just dies right away. You know what I mean?
No.
And by the way, the evidence for this, read the Pseudepigrapha. This is volume 2. Volume 1 is even no. Volume 2 is the one that's got all the synagogal prayers, Orphica. Oh, I just ripped the piece. See how it's got the Orphica fragments?
Yep.
These are Jewish Orphic texts from Alexandria, written by Jews who are, through the mouth of Orpheus, is doing psalms. Right. Like these are Hellenistic Jews.
Exactly.
And we have the sources. There's tons of evidence. You have Ezekiel the tragedian, who wrote tragedies in Alexandria. You have the Odes of Solomon. You have the Aristobulus of Alexandria, Aristeas the exegete, Pseudo-Eupolemus, Artapanus. These are all Pseudo-Hecataeus. These are all Jewish texts, completely Hellenistic. Most of them are written in Greek. Some of them have both dual text floating around. Right. But the point is we're not just saying this from theories. This is from the evidence.
Right. That's the problem.
This is all leading up to Christianity.
Exactly. I just think that isolation between both worlds is a silly one, especially when you just think about it, man. What is Paul doing? He's going to that broader world. Right. And again, you're going to market to a broader world. You need to speak that marketing language.
But he believes in that.
Of course.
It's his own thinking. It's not like he's trying to get these Hellenistic.
Right. He's not faking it to try and
he's saying, no, you guys are right. We don't have to do all this circumcision and all this synagogue stuff. We can like, that's Paul's idea. Like, that's and I don't think Paul was alone as a Pharisee type of thinker. By the way, another thing I want to point out is proto-Christian. We talk about proto-Christianity. The Sadducees were temple-based mostly. The Pharisees were in the temple too.
Yeah.
You had both of them kind of running the show. The Essenes were big on the scene, and they were also in every city, according to Josephus. Josephus says they were in every city. And then there are even Philo thinks the Essenes are the same people as these Therapeutae.
Yeah.
So there's that link going on. But then the Pharisees were building synagogues in Greek cities like Ephesus, Corinth, Philippi, all the major cities that Paul is writing to. Pergamum, Alexandria, Antioch, Syria. Their Pharisees are international.
Right.
They are building synagogues in all the cities. So then the question is, who is Paul writing to? It's these people, plus Greek Platonists that are already going towards the idea of one God. And they're already going towards the idea of piety. And they're already going towards the idea of having divine laws and all that stuff. So like you can see the whole map is already there.
Exactly. Even the concept, for example, of baptism of the dead in Paul, I found this in Orphic mythology, 5th century BCE, which I documented in the documentary that I just did, but also 65 CE, contemporaneous with Paul.
Right.
They're baptizing on behalf of the dead. Right.
Yeah.
Where is that in Jewish literature, right? Where is that in the Hebrew Bible? You don't get it.
And you have in Orphic literature this idea of original sin, where instead of a fruit being eaten, you have the god who's a fruit god. Dionysus is the god of the swelling of fruits. He gets eaten and consumed by the Titans. And then Zeus takes the Titans' flesh and creates starts a whole deluge, their flood story, starts the whole deluge and recreates the cosmos out of the flesh of the Titans. And that modern humans are a mixture of flesh and spirit.
Right.
So you have the spirit and flesh spirit that you get in Christianity, that dualism that Paul talks about, body and spirit. You're trapped in your body. Your spirit is whole and divine, and your spirit is pure. But your body is Titan flesh, and it's evil because it ate the forbidden fruit, which is Dionysus.
It's the Titan ancestor. Yeah.
Titan.
Just like you have the Adamic myth, you have the Titanic myth. And by the way, they're different decals, different stickers with different cultural backing of where these stories originate or how they're trying to paint their narrative. But
the physics behind it is the same.
Right.
What I mean by that is they both have very specific elements of why we are mortal, of why we need to have some sort of salvation from some God. Right.
Exactly.
They both open up this thing. You ever wonder why I'm talking to Christians on Twitter all the time, and they're like, "Oh, you don't worship, you don't believe in Christianity? Well, aren't you scared of going to hell?" Or they'll say something like, "Don't you want to get saved from your sins?" They don't realize how circular that is.
Yeah.
Why are you presupposing that we have sins?
Right.
It's so embedded in our culture. They just assume that if a God exists, then sin must exist as well. It's completely assumed because of this Orphic Platonist Christian idea that it's embedded in our DNA. People can't even wrap their heads around the idea that sin is something we made up.
Right.
You know,
in the mythology of Orphism, which, by the way, Paul indicates this in his own language with flesh. He uses the word flesh, which, come on, bro. Like, you didn't get that with Jewish thought. You go to the Hebrew Bible, they're not talking about bad their flesh is. This is definitely Platonic.
No.
But it gets even more interesting. Your point about the mixture between the Titanic, which are like the fallen angel myth. Think of the fallen angel mythology in a way, and they're the cause of the fall of mankind. Because people ask this, even Christians, when I was a Christian, it was like, where did evil come from? How did it really enter the world? So you try to do the whole free will thing with Adam in the garden, but truth is there was already a fallen angel motif that we believed before that. Before Adam and Eve even ate the fruit, Satan had already rebelled in many of Christian mythology. And so here you have this Orphic mythology, and like you said, when you act bad, lawless, immoral, you are acting in line with your flesh, which, by the way, is the Titanic behavior. When you act good and righteous, that is the Dionysus, the Orphic spark within you. And the Gnostics picked up on this, man. So why did it naturally flow so well where Christianity had break-off groups like what we call Valentinians and various different Essenes and stuff that had this kind of theology built in? It's just, there's like a playbook or blueprint, so to speak, on this entire Hellenistic thought from the Platonic philosophy we see that just penetrates the world of this Christian movement which was already being passed along by the Orphic Dionysian cults, the mysteries, for centuries.
By the way, I just want to show on the screen real quick. People, the word Bacchus, it actually comes from an Indo-European root for a word that means like berry or olive berry or like some sort of like fruit. So like literally they're eating the fruit, these Titans. I'm not just like saying, oh, because he's a wine god, and I'm connecting that to grapes, and then I'm connecting. No. The wine is secondary to the primary nature is the fruit. He's not a wine god primarily. The wine is secondary. We call him a wine god because that's how he gets depicted in like medieval times. But if we go back far enough, especially the oldest rendering of Dionysus that we get in the Orphic text, or who Plato knows, he's the god of the swelling of fruits. That's why his name Bacchus literally means like berry. He's the berry god. So when the Titans are consuming him, they're consuming the berry god. They're consuming the forbidden fruit. You know?
Absolutely. Hey, all right. I'm going to ask you a question before we dive into some of these sources.
Yeah.
Why are you into mythology? Why are you obsessed personally with it?
Because it is the foundation of our culture. Our culture is just a series of influences on top of influences on top of influences on top of influences. And what I'm so fascinated by is that inspiration behind everything. So when I'm watching a new film today, some amazing blockbuster movie that was, what's his name, who did the Batman trilogy, he's going to do the Odysseus movie coming out soon too.
Right.
Nolan.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be good. Yeah.
When I'm watching one of his movies, Interstellar or something, you're watching the best of the best, and it's inspired by themes and ideas and themes that go back somewhere else, that go back somewhere else, that go back somewhere else, and eventually you get back to the ancient mythology. It's behind it all. It's behind all of our cultures, behind all of our themes, the Dionysian, the Christian, the ancient Babylonian mythology stuff, the idea of hubris that you find in the Epic of Gilgamesh. All of these themes that we find in characters in our new movies today are all just being like reestablished for a new audience that has a new culture. But the themes are all still there. Like it's like Plato's forms almost, or Jungian archetypes. Like these things are just, you can't escape them, whether you think they're legit or not. It's just how we get things across. It's how we do culture. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Look, we got a special guest here, Stephen from Cross Bible, ladies and gentlemen.
What's up, guys?
Nice.
Hey, if I may take a stab at this, and maybe Steve, actually, let me not be rude, Stephen. You're popping in guest. Why are you into mythology? And then I'll answer my personal take. I know that I'm like literally putting you on the spot, dude. You just popped in.
Why am I into mythology? Yeah, I mean, I'm primarily into language, so that's my thing. And so when you study Greek, you just have to get into mythology. Like, there's no way around it. Unless you take the very myopic approach of like, I'm only gonna touch the Bible, which obviously my primary interest is in the Bible. My whole website, Cross Bible project is focused exclusively on the Bible. But you can't ignore the cultural milieu, right? Like you have
Don't
to be
kick against the goads. That's from the Bacchae.
Exactly.
You get like quotes like that, or Cretans are always liars. You get in Titus. If you don't know the ancient Greek background, you'll just be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Right.
Yeah. And also I have a child. I have a 6-year-old son that I raised speaking Greek. And we have a large collection of children's books that are part, I have children's Bibles and I have children's mythology. And, so I read to him in Greek every night, and we read all the classics,
Absolutely.
Subscribe
to Stephen, ladies and gentlemen, Cross Bible. Subscribe to Gnostic Informant. I'm going to tell you, this is a fact. I'm not making this up. You will burn if you don't. Okay. And they love you so much. We're just trying to prevent you from burning. And they create by the way.
By the way, if you Steven's doing Greek right now, teaching Greek. This is how legit he is. We got packets. I went out and got my own packet maker, and look at this. We have his own program and everything of
Let me put
teaching me Greek.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta ask you while you have it on full screen, Neal, how well is Steven at teaching this stuff, bro? Like, I mean, are you not having a blast or what?
Oh, I'm learning so quickly with this guy. Like he's got good methodology of how to. You're coming at it from different angles, whereas some teachers, of my experience, I had 2 teachers before you. I'm not going to say who they are, but I'm not going to put them on the spot. But 2 teachers before you, and they both were just kind of like, just memorize it, just try it, just keep going. Oh, you forgot that word? Here, I'll tell you it. And it's just like we're just trying to go. But Steven actually has like methods of trying to do like repetition and trying to understand the sort of physics behind this. Like, why is there a circumflex accent on the long vowel, and why is there a grave accent on a short vowel? Why is it over here? What is the penult? What is the anti-penult? Like all these, he's actually teaching
learning
me
the nuts and bolts of the actual freaking language,
and it makes it way more easier to actually understand why we're saying certain things and why they mean what they are.
I can't flex, but I can. I will eventually, dude. I got. Steven's teaching me to. This is all children stuff, but you know what? You got to start somewhere. And I still have to do my exercises.
No, that's how you
documentary, man.
Everybody's witnessing. These are my two of my Greek students. I do private lessons. If you go to crossbible.com and scroll to the bottom, you can submit an inquiry. I usually do the first lesson free, so you can get a feel for like what the approach is, and I adapt my approach to the students. So for Neal, we're focusing on classical literature because that's what he wants to target. We use sort of a modified Erasmian pronunciation because that's what he prefers. For Derek, we're starting more on the modern Greek side of things, using modern Greek pronunciation and more of a commutative approach. But I've gradually transitioned Neal from the Hansen and Quinn grammar translate method. We're working our way towards the Athena's textbook, Italian edition. I provide all the materials for that because that's but
also going back and forth to doing both.
Yeah, we're still gonna there is value in learning explicit grammar and learning all the terminologies and understanding the difference between the moods and the voices and the verbal system and all of the, and the dual and all this obscure things. Like it's still useful, but you kind of have to just get the basics first before you really get thrown into the deep end of the pool. And the traditional grammar translate method that you get from a textbook like Hansen and Quinn, it's a lot to throw at a beginning student for like the first few units of a textbook. I can do it. I'm very familiar with it, but I don't think the retention is as high as when you get into a graded reader and you're just hitting the text and you're not translating. You're working out the parts in your head and getting used to the different, word order in Greek,
because Hansen and Quinn, not to go too deep into this, like people probably think this is boring, but real quick, Hansen and Quinn is more technical for translating, and it's like a system. Like, okay, I find the verb. All right, what mood is the verb? Okay, then I go from there. What's the subject? What's the object? And I can sort of just like systematically translate a text using Hansen and Quinn. But the Athena's actually is getting you to become a reader and a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's two different things that I'm learning right now from you.
Well, I just want to say, everybody, go sign up, crossbible.com. I need to add that to the description, but I'm going to put it in the post right here.
Yeah, and I have a big collection of, I think I have 35 Bibles now. If you go to crossbible.com and click on the versions button, you can take a look at the versions that we have and filter them by language. I have close to 15 Greek Bibles right now, if I recall. A lot of different editions of the New Testament. I'm working hard on building robust resources also for the Greek Septuagint. And it's probably the only place online where you can line up the Hebrew Masoretic text with the English and pull up a Septuagint next to it and flip the orientation. There's a lot of cool features. It's 100% free. If you go and register, it supports, it just supports our metrics, but there's, there's an optional subscription. So we have like a Patreon. If you want to support the mission and you want to support the work we're doing and help us develop new features, you can sign up and, for a monthly subscription on the billing page, but that's optional. It doesn't unlock anything yet. We're working on some new study features. And right now, a lot of the income that we generate is just from my one-on-one lessons that I provide to people if they're interested in just doing like an hour a week, 2 hours a week. I have some students who are a lot more who dedicate more time than others, but the consistency is king, and also exercising the 4 quadrants or the 4 strands, right? So you want reading, writing, speaking, and listening, right? You then tend to get all 4 of those when you study any modern language. If you just learn Spanish, right, you need to learn how to speak it, and that tends to be the expectation. But with Greek, it's a little tricky. Like a lot of people they want to learn how to read. They don't care about writing or listening or speaking, and then they just sort of lose out on those benefits in terms of like their language learning.
Well, look, final plug on this. I hope everyone will get locked in with Steven and what he's doing. Me and Neal are, and down the road, we've got ideas. So we're hoping to start actually putting some trips together eventually where we're going on the ground to these ancient spots and hoping that people who are interested in taking this further will do it. Again, leads to my kind of thing. But before we do is Matt Martinez, thanks for the super chat, says y'all should check out Final Fantasy 16. I think you'll be able to use it to teach people way better than telling them to read a book, because it's like putting the book into an entertaining format. That's actually kind of what we're trying to do, Matt, me and Neal, with our documentaries. And Steven also is now trying to find a way to package this heavy lifting stuff to a happy, fun, enjoyable learning format. We're trying. Be great if we had editors on the level of Final Fantasy, but thank you so much for that. If I could answer the question why I'm obsessed with myths, then we should get into some sources. And of course, any contributions from you, Steven, we're here to have fun, bro.
Yeah. Let's check it out.
My favorite, my reason for being obsessed, I think, and I mean, by the way, I may not even realize the full depth of why I'm obsessed with this. I think, like you guys touched on, it's the fabric of everything we do. In some way it touches it, it's influenced it, and it's kind of what has molded and created the societies. And because myth is not divorced from what we do culturally, how we behave, our infrastructure, our political, like everything is tied in. Oftentimes it somehow touches this. But I think because I was such a fundamentalist Christian who literally went on record one time with my phone. I'm just picking up like a little case here, but I remember in the car, because I'd had skeptics that were denying the belief. They didn't believe the Bible. They just didn't believe it. And I remember seeing that online, and I picked up my phone and I said, if the Bible, I'm not even kidding you, I wish I had this video. This would be gold today. Y'all would laugh so damn hard at me. I was like, if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed a whale, I would believe it, because the word of God said so. And I'm thinking, I was so nutty that I would have actually believed a human swallowed a whale, like a massive ass whale, because all things are possible with God. I was playing make believe in my head with this religion, but I literally believed, right? So once I found out that a lot of this material never actually happened, and if there is some kernel of history behind some of it, we'll never really know exactly what it is because it's so worked over with legend and storytelling. Then I found out these aren't like, it's not like this is the first dude who died and rose again, or the first dude who calmed a storm, or the first dude who was born by a god, or the first dude that did this. When that happened, bro, it blew my mind. I mean, remember now, I'm waiting. Jesus is around the corner. The second coming is about to happen. I'm literally like trying not to sin. I'm trying to live my life. Like, I'm obsessed. And then I find out there's this massive world that I did not know about, that they never told me about, and they told me to ignore, to avoid, not to study, that truly touches the entire fabric of Christianity and Judaism and everything. And it's, you go to Genesis. Well, what do you see? You see flood myth. You see creation mythology. You see all of this stuff that patterned other narratives and myths of other cultures. Why is mine true and they're all false? So that put me on a detective journey, I think, to going, I need to know these other stories. And as I studied them, I did it in a way that was kind of chip on my shoulder to critique Christians and I still do that from time to time. But what happened in the process, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way as I did, because we all were Christian. I know that, Stephen, I don't know what you identify today as, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you were a fundamentalist, I think, more so than what you are today. And when we approach it, I started falling in love with the stories. I started going, you know what? What a cool story. Heracles, 12 labors, like that shit never happened. But did it need to happen for me to be influenced? Did Lord of the Rings need to happen for me to really love that Frodo is fighting the struggle of not wanting to keep the ring at the last moment, but he ends up with the ring in the lava, in the mountain? I mean, that's what ended up happening. I feel is like I'm coming full circle. I'm like, I love these things, even though I don't take them the way I once did. So that's my little nutshell journey of mythology. Where I'm at least right now.
Well,
Anyway.
I think you also have to ask, like, are these materials that you find in the Bible, like, if you think of them as being written to you, like this is written to me, like Paul's addressing me, you're not really getting it. Like, you have to keep in mind that it wasn't written to you. You can believe it's written for you if this is your holy book, but at the end of the day, it was written to a different audience in a different time. And unless you can put yourself into the shoes of that audience, you're not going to receive the message in the same way. Like you need to kind of put yourself in that place and time and get that, be sort of transport yourself into that milieu in order to receive the message properly, I think.
You're right. And before Neal runs into a rabbit hole, because we're going to jump into a rabbit hole real deep, real hard, real fast. You're right. I think the other thing I wanted to know, but I wanted this within Christianity, is I wanted to know what the Bible meant, which is why I went from denomination to denomination. I wanted to be, because I believed it, is like, I want the accurate teaching. What did Paul mean? What did the gospel say? What did it actually mean when they said it? Which, by the way, that exploration is a fast track to exiting any form of literalistic, fundamentalist type of stuff. When you do a historical exploration on this material, you will eventually pop that bubble if you were raised in any kind of fundamentalist evangelical Christianity like me. It's going to happen. Goodbye. Say goodbye. It's going to happen if you're going to be honest and sincere. And that's what happened to me. And here we are. So Neal, Jesus is the only one who ever rose from the dead. I'm finding a way to shift it to you, bro, because I know, by the way, he's the only dying and rising God, man.
I actually have a clip that I want to just do a little slam dunk on Bart Ehrman for a quick, just to get into the topic, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
I got a clip from on the
Forgive
bottom.
us,
If you
Bart.
pull it up. Yeah. Well, hey, look, this is fair. I think he would, if he thought he dunks on people all the time. Anyways,
okay.
I think let's just play the clip and we'll talk about it. Know all the sources, but they don't, and they just get it wrong and embarrass themselves. Whoops, I didn't mean
rising gods. There's this idea that there were Mesopotamian deities and other gods at the time. There was this idea that with the seasons they would die and then rise again, and that potentially Jesus was just kind of a copy pasting or a Jewish version of this notion, this idea of dying and rising deities.
Yeah, that's another one that's really overplayed. If you actually read these stories, first of all, you never have a human being who dies and comes back to life. Jesus in the Gospels is portrayed as a human being who comes back to life. He's raised from the dead, and that's not Dionysius. The gods who die, they're not gods who come back to earth. It's not a prominent theme in Greek and Roman religion. I don't know of a definitive case in Greek and Roman religion.
Romulus, for example, is not agricultural, and he does come back to earth. This is not even up for debate. All right. Okay, here, let me just play this so I can. I was going to pull it up and read it, but I do it here anyway, so I might as well just, and then we'll keep going. But I just wanted to show you. Bart will say something that's objectively. It's not like his opinion. This is like, there are no definitive cases of a God who comes back to life. Like, it's either true or not. It's not like I disagree and here's why.
Put your emotions aside. Like,
yeah, here's the sources. Here's right. The primary source. It predates Christianity. It's from the 1st century BC, right around the first common era. Livy lived at the turn of the century, probably 14 BC, something like that.
Livy is not agricultural. It's a mortal who dies, becomes a god, and comes back to Earth.
لو كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم
Get
بيننا
paid, baby. Get
Yeah.
paid. You
Also,
can
like
skip it, right?
Well, verse
Okay.
1 of chapter 16, book 1. After these immortal achievements, Romulus held the view of his army at Caprade Palace. A violent thunderstorm suddenly arose and enveloped the king in so dense of a cloud that he was quite invisible to the assembly. From that hour, Romulus was no longer seen on Earth. Then, in verse 3, those present hailed Romulus as a god, the son of God, the king and father of city of Rome. Then if you go down a little farther, it says, the Proculus Julius speaks and says, at the break of dawn today, the father of the city suddenly descended from heaven and appeared to me. How much clearer does it have to be? Bart.
All right, so that was one of the first ones that I wanted to get off. Just wanted to put that out there. It's like there's the definitive case of a half mortal. Romulus is half mortal, half. I don't even think he's he's just a mortal actually.
Yeah,
right?
I don't.
He's
Well, he
he's
is
just a mortal.
demigod. No, there
He's
is a
from a line of Venus. He's from
but
a.
there
he's
is.
from-
I think
but
there's a
he's
birth
not-
narrative, isn't there?
Yeah. He's like a demigod basically, but
Yeah.
he's like Jesus. He's
Jesus.
a mortal demigod type of guy who has two different accounts of his death. Weirdly, one of them he gets stabbed in the Senate, which people think is that's ripping off Caesar. That's later or something like that. But then there's another one, in this case, where he just a storm comes and the storm just takes him away, and they're all like, "Oh, he's dead. It sucks. He is a god. Let's set up a temple to him. He's gonna be. Let's give him the honors of Divi." And then he comes back, and then somebody sees him, and they tells that person, "Oh, this is what you need to do. This is what you want to do. This is how you're gonna run Rome." It's very similar. Like it's all of the boxes are checked, and I don't know why he doesn't. This is like right in your face. I don't know how you can make a definitive statement like that.
So,
But another-
you got a critic here, right? And I'm glad there's some pushback because this is necessary.
Yes.
Does it say
I was gonna get
Romulus
into
died?
I was
Yes.
going to get into this, but I wanted to do one more example first.
Okay,
But
go ahead.
I'm not ignoring this.
Yep.
I'm not
Okay.
ignoring this.
We'll come back
So
to you.
here's another. I just want to give another example real quick of something that I really think is like so clear. And this is from oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry.
Is this the one with the Aeneid?
Yeah, this is
Oh,
from
God,
this is from
this is so good.
this is from the Aeneid. This is from Ovid's Metamorphoses. I mean, about Aeneas.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, I have it on the Windows. I have it in my Windows. Let's see. Where's my window? Okay. So let me share this. All right. So in this Ovid's Metamorphoses, this one does say that Aeneid dies. But it's you'll see what I mean. It's kind of the opposite here. So Aeneas just wins this war in Carthage, but he's laying there dead. And then Venus comes along. He's the son of Venus, and she's weeping over him. It's the very typical the goddess mourning over the hero. Very common. Attis has a version of this. Adonis has a version of this. Osiris, Tammuz. There's always a theme of like this dying savior, and the goddess comes and weeps over him, and this is what happens. And
Mary.
Ashmun, Mary, yeah. And she says, "Oh, Father, who has never at any time been harsh to me, now be most kind, I pray, to my Aeneas, who is thy grandson of our blood. Grant him, O most excellent, some divinity. However small I care not, if only thou." I hate this English.
Yeah,
it is
I know.
enough once to have looked upon the unlovely kingdom, once to have crossed the Stygian stream. The gods all gave assent, nor did the queen consort keep an unyielding face, but peacefully consented. The father Jove declared, "You are both worthy of this heavenly boon, both thou who prayest, and for he whom thou prayest. Have then, my daughter, what thou desire." He spoke, and Venus, rejoicing, gave her father thanks. Then, this is the craziest, this is a cool scene right here.
Yeah.
Borne aloft through the yielding air by her harnessed doves, she came to Laurentian coast, where the river Numicius, winding through the bed's sheltering reeds, pours his fresh waters into the neighboring sea. There's a little baptism scene going on here.
Right. Water.
She bathed the river god wash away from Aeneas all his mortal part and carry it down in his silent stream in the ocean depths. The horn god obeyed Venus's command, and in his waters cleansed and washed quite away whatever mortal is in Aeneas. His best part remained in him. His mother sprinkled his body and anointed it with divine perfume, touched his lips with ambrosia and sweet nectar mixed, and so made him a god, with the Roman populace styled indigus, which is, by the way, that's a epithet for Jupiter. And there's actually commentary on this, that he like becomes a Jupiter indigus in some sort of fashion. He becomes one with God, becomes one with the Father, right? And honored with a temple and sacrifice. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this up before I answer that question is, in this source, Aeneas does not actually come back. He just becomes a god and goes up to the heavens. He doesn't actually come back. Bart would be correct about this one. In the case of Romulus, it doesn't actually say they found Romulus's body and he was definitely dead.
Of course.
But they're mourning over him. He's gone. He's not there. It doesn't even say he's still alive.
There are two stories about Romulus, though. One
does die, yeah.
Yeah, one is that the Senate killed him.
Right, I said that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Sure. One is that the Senate killed him, which many classicists think they modeled this myth after the Julius Caesar.
Right.
Yeah, and then the other one is that he was taken and just gone. And you got to kind of think like, okay, there's an assumption he's dead. There's an assumption he's gone.
Right.
I thought Apollonius of Tyana right then when he was just taken. But
here's what gets me. Drives me crazy about this, where you get like New Testament scholars and they're so like this. Well, does it say that he was dead? Does it say 3 days later he rose? Does it say?
Yeah.
Are we trying to figure out if they plagiarized, or are we trying to figure out if there's themes that they could be potentially be drawing from?
Right.
Because I don't think all the detail. It doesn't matter if he came back or not. Number one. And the reason why that one doesn't matter, because the original Mark doesn't even come back.
He just goes.
The original Mark is no different than Aeneas dying and going to heaven. That's it. That's the original Mark. And then as far as Romulus goes, it doesn't say he died in the text, but why would that like take away from the idea that Christians writing the Gospels could be inspired or even competing with the idea of Romulus being taken away in a whirlwind? Everyone's mourning over the loss of him, and then he comes back miraculously. Why do you? Well, it doesn't say he died, or in the case of Aeneas, it doesn't say he came back to Earth.
Right.
It's like, why are those the things people are focused on? Look at all the elements here. And you got to think, as a gospel author in the late 1st century, inspired by the culture, I'm not saying they're plagiarizing, but what I am saying is I think it should be on the table that these other stories are inspiring,
or at least in some way there's something in the narratives of the culture. Because look at Aristeas of Proconesus. I didn't bring this up, but he went into a fuller shop. And this is in Herodotus. This tells you how, and this is old from Herodotus. We're talking 7th, 8th century BCE, Homeric Hesiod period. This Aristeas of Proconesus, famous tale, he goes into a fuller shop and dies. The fuller closed the shop, leaves the body in. Notice he seals the building. The tomb is sealed shut. Okay, think of this in an analogous way.
Right.
He leaves with the body in his shop to go find the family to tell them, hey, Aristeas is dead. So he goes to find the people, and another man says, hold on, what are you talking about? I just saw him leaving the city on a road. By the way, there's a road, constant road narratives. By the way, that's not only in Aristeas. You get this with Caesars who appear to people on Roman roads, the Appian Way, which I have a documentary coming out about this soon. But Aristeas is said to be dead, and he's missing from the fuller shop when they come back. And then someone says, no, I saw him down here. Then 200 years later, he appears to people in a particular town, and he says, listen, I need you to build this temple to Zeus or one of the gods, and put a statue of me next to it. So they actually worship him as a demigod, that he's actually divine at this point. He's locked in a building, and his body's now missing. After they go and view where the body is. And
Right.
he's alive afterwards. He's walking and meeting people according to the stories.
But that's the point, and that's exactly and this people will try to look at these like they'll try to they're it's like they're trying to compare the minute details as if we're saying they're plagiarizing.
Yeah.
We're not. No, Bruce Lawton doesn't say that. Bruce Lawton is probably the best example of like somebody who writes about Memesis, I think. Greek myth in the Bible is like one of the best books out there. He never says they're plagiarizing. It's the thematic background that we're talking about. It's the idea of a hero who just fell and then miraculously comes back somehow. Those are the major aspects here. And Dionysus, for example, this is why I was so critical of Dan McClellan when he was like, well, doesn't actually say that he turned water into wine. He just made the empty jars get filled with wine. It's like you're missing the point. You're missing the point of the epiphany, of the theophany, of the gift of God, and the miraculous turning of the jars from nothing into wine.
Right.
One of them has water, one of them is nothing. What does that matter? And the idea of the Christians could not be borrowing from Dionysus because one of them has water and the other one's empty, or in the case where there is water, there's no jars in that one. That one's just a river, and that one doesn't have jars.
Yeah, but even
like,
John's gospel,
you could take both and see the elements are there.
John's gospel actually says these jars. So you and me both found out that the Greek myth with these upper, what are they? Bronze cauldrons.
Yeah, what is that word again? Yeah.
I can't remember. I know they're meant for water. John's gospel says that these are water, pots that are meant for water that he then changes them into wine.
Lay base.
I just think, bro, what do you think about this, Stephen? Sometimes there's so much Xerox or so much focus in on like what the details are in terms of each myth being, different, and they're going to be. If they Xerox copy, it's not going to take off. People would look at it and go, that's like crap work compared to you having your own models and imitating these kind of things. Or maybe they're just not happy with the idea of imitation.
Yeah, I think imitation is not necessarily copying. It's transforming, it's improving, it's revolutionizing. It's a different kind of adaptation that we're not really used to.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and that's one of the things. This is what they call it. It's called a lay base. They're primarily used for religious or wedding ceremonies, and they usually have scenes of the Dionysian, the Bacchae on them. That's the word they use. That's the word that they use in the I think it's the gospel, right?
In John?
Yeah, John. Yeah.
Levies, I'll have to check it out.
Is it John that uses that one? Derek, you and I just were on this subject not that long ago.
Yeah. What were you saying?
The lay base, right?
If John uses the word lay
John
base?
uses that word lay base, right?
I don't know.
I don't think so. It occurs in the Psalms, but
I'm trying to think of where the lay base came.
He uses a different.
No, I'm sorry. Here's what it is. Okay, John doesn't use lay base, but John does go out of his way to say these stone jars are used for ceremonies and ceremonial washing,
ritual purification,
weddings, which is the exact function of the Greek lay base. That's what we pointed out. And we weren't the ones that discovered this. This was already written about from a bunch of classicists. But that's what I just wanted to make sure I got that fact right. I didn't know if John used it or not. But behind all that, so people will go, well, Dionysus, he gets ripped apart when he's a baby, and Jesus dies at the end of his life, and like there's always like comparisons of like the details of the resurrection or what it means, or is Dionysus' resurrection salvific? People get into that, which it is, by the way. There is the Orphic golden leaves that we have indicate that you are basically, it says like I become it says like thrown into milk, and I become like it's mimicking the child sacrifice of Dionysus.
But even the like you and I have been looking at this, the Orphic Dionysian mysteries, they would participate in sparagmos and ophologia, What is that? Well, that's the tearing of Dionysus by the Titans as an infant, and they would reenact it. And in my documentary, I show the moment where the one pottery where it shows, I think it's Pentheus on the art, but it's exactly what the Maenads did to Orpheus in the myth, and of course what the Titans did to Dionysus, where they rip him apart, and then from the background, I have a moment where the priest breaks the bread in half and rips the piece of Jesus in half. My body is broken in half. What happens when you eat Jesus's flesh and drink his blood? You get immortality because you're imitating the broken body of Christ, participating in his death and resurrection. The same thing is what happens in the Orphic Dionysian myths.
Exactly.
If your point that this was not a salvific act or a death of a sacrifice,
it's not true. It is.
It has to be. Yeah.
And that's what this book actually. And in this book, Redefining Dionysus, there's a lot on that. There's a whole. And by the way, I brought this another book. It's obvious. It's weird. It's the same title, but for Redefining Ancient Orphism, they have nothing. They're not from the same author. They just have similar titles. But this book talks about the Dionysus or Zagreus being the reason for sin. What is it called? What is it called? Sin in the beginning.
Original sin.
Original sin. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyways, even deeper than all that, even forget about the comparisons between what happened to Dionysus and what happened to Jesus. As McDonald points out, what I think the thing Dennis points out in his book, the Dionysian Gospel book that he put out, right in the beginning, in the first chapters of his book, before he even gets into any of the Memesis, he demonstrates that when people were learning Greek in Alexandria or in Pergamum or whatever library, that the way they learn is by copying Homer and copying Euripides. And he has like Byzantine evidence for it. It's all in his book. And this blew my mind. But
I just throwing up Stephen's thing.
Yeah. And this blew my mind because, and the reason why I'm bringing that up, I want to show you some stuff about what is a Bacchus. If you want to just,
Yeah. Did you want to comment on this, Stephen? Is that why you pulled it up? Oh, you're muted, bro. You're muted, bro.
Do this first, and I'll go back to what I'm saying.
Sorry. Yeah, I just looked it up. So this is Cross Bible. So on John 2, he specifically says that these are stone water pots, right? Lithine idrie, that were used for the Jewish custom of purification. So like he wants to explain this to his readers that this is a specific kind. It's an idria, which is like a water pot, right? But that it's a specific kind that was used for this purification. Right. And then he says, fill the water pots, and you can say, you can see misa tetas idrias idatos, right, with water.
Right. But the commentary on this, and this is actually in this book right here, right? Redefining Dionysus. The commentary on this is Paula Corrente talked about this when you and I were talking to her, Derek, is they're going out of their way to tell the Greek audience, not the Hebrew. This is not written for Hebrews. The Hebrews don't care about these stone jars. They know what their own stuff is. John is writing for Greeks. Yeah. So when John is saying these are used for ceremonial washings, the Greek will go, it's like our lay base. That's what the commentary on this is saying. I didn't make this up.
Paula and me and you were on a call, and she actually pointed out that the bronze cauldrons, which by the way, we'd have to pull up the sources, but a lot of these are in Latin too, so it's difficult to like. Maybe the Aristotle one we could pull up.
No, the Aristotle, Diodorus, and Pausanias.
Yeah,
those three sources specifically say that Dionysus takes 3 giant laybase and they're empty, and the priests leave the temple overnight and come back and it's filled with wine, and it specifically uses the word laybase.
But those jars are for water purification.
For water purification. So they're usually filled with water.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that their water turned into wine.
No.
But people have pointed out, not just me, I'm saying the classes have pointed out that somebody reading John would probably think about their own laybase because of the way it's described, the stone jars. The stone thing is like, okay, it's stone.
Well, that's a Jewish custom. They want you to understand Like everyone knows that they're going to have a chalk vessel or whatever it is because they can't have bronze. But
Right,
and that's
this-
the difference is what makes them go, sorry, have a nice day, ladies and gentlemen. And it's like
this, but this is what I mean about these minute details are you're missing the point here. You're missing why it's being explained this way. You're missing why we're not talking about Greek custom here. We're talking about what the Jews are doing in their own in Cana. But they're trying to let you know in Greek to a Greek audience what the purpose of these things were. And the people reading John in the 90s or 110s or whatever are familiar with those other sources about Dionysus. There's like 5 sources about Dionysus doing this miracle. It's a well-known myth. This wasn't like some random thing that I found in some grammarian commentary.
And it's not just a random dude. These are like high up political figures, like Vespasian's right-hand man literally is talking about this custom. Pausanias is discussing. I mean, it's like, it's legit. What do you have this up for, Stephen?
I pulled it up when we started talking about Mark, because obviously we touched on it briefly. We're sort of regressing here. Sorry to distract, but
no, you're good.
The short ending of Mark, if we're going to say that the original ending was at the end of verse 8, and you can see the SBL Greek brackets, double brackets, this part of the long ending. They have all the long endings crammed into it. But Ephovundogar, which is like they were afraid, is the sort of, it's known to be the sort of problematic short ending, right? Because it's like it's ending in God. It's kind of this cliffhanger. We don't get what's going on. But just to clarify, the young man, the Neaniskos that's in the tomb when they come dressed in white,
the 20-something-year-old man. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he tells the women in the tomb. He says, you know, do not be amazed or afraid. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who has been crucified. He is risen. He's not here. Here's the place where they laid him, but go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see there you will see him just as he told you. And they fled. So we don't really have an ascension right away. We have the implication that he's not here anymore. He's risen. There's not a post-resurrection narrative.
But we don't know if it's physical. We don't know if he's a ghost. We don't know anything about that.
The nature of his resurrection, I think he was probably, he had a body because the body's missing from the tomb. But
I'm fine with that. But my point was the minute detail about Aeneas not coming back should be secondary to the fact that he's dead. They do a bunch of ritual shit, anointing and all this stuff, and then he's becomes a god. That to me is way more of a primary detail than the fact that he didn't come back in physical form and say a bunch of things. Like, to me, it's all secondary. It's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same. I'm saying the major aspect is he's a dead mortal who's doing a bunch of anointing rituals and then becomes a god.
Yeah.
That's way more interesting than a physically coming back.
Just to nail what you said, though, Stephen, in emphasizing your point, I see what you're saying. In the text, it implies he's going to show up over here in Galilee, supposed to. But, of course, in this text, that's why Matthew wants to fix it. And, of course, they build on this narrative. But even at the end of the day, let's just grant that, all right, it's assumed he's supposed to go visit before he ascends to heaven. What is the ultimate, driving force here? Is that Jesus going to spend forever on earth, alive on earth? Because guess what? He resurrects. He's supposed to be here, right? He's supposed to be like sitting on a throne over here as a king.
This is what I mean. This is my point. That's what I'm saying. Him coming back is so secondary.
Yeah, it's
the fact that he's God now. He's a god now.
Right.
Who cares about him coming back? That's so.
Yeah, they want to nail that
minor.
down.
Yeah, it's such a minor detail. I don't care about that part.
But the short. I guess the point I was going to make is that the short ending at least has the young man explaining that ierthi, right? So he is risen, which a lot of people like to take this eirome and say that this verb means to wake up, right? It means to get up. And so maybe
it's not the anastasis word, which would mean
it's not the anastasis, right? It's not a full blown anastasis. It's ierthi. This does have enough like matching examples that show that it is used for resurrection when you are revived from the dead, or you're just revived in general. And then it says, proagi mas istin Galilean, so he is going ahead of you to Galilee. He's
right.
So he's in some form, right? He's traveling there. Ekiton afton obseste, so you will see him. And this in the passive voice is also used for the appearances. So it says, when it says ophthi, it's usually translated as he appeared to, but it actually literally means he was seen in the passive voice.
And I'm fine with that. And I lean towards that being the case, that he probably was physical, especially with Derek saying his body's gone.
His body's gone.
But right before this story, there's the story of Julius Caesar, people seeing him rising up in the skies. So seeing him what is he? Is he back as a human again? Is he in God form? What's the nature of him? We don't know in the earliest Mark. That's my major point.
We know, the only thing we get is like he rose, he went ahead of you into Galilee, and you're going to see him there.
Right. That's it.
Yeah, we don't get any more details.
There's no Thomas touching him, none of that stuff. And to me, this could, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it could just be like Caesar rising up. You're seeing Caesar rising up in Galilee, something like that. I don't know.
I mean, look, I go to the Roman imperial stuff, and Richard Miller has shown in Resurrection Reception where there's a man, can't remember his particular name. He's an important figure, by the way. He's not just a nobody. He's swearing in court oaths that he saw the Caesars on roads walking, not like I saw a star in the sky, a blinding light, like Paul does on a road. Like he sees the dudes themselves and saw Drusilla ascend to heaven. So like there are eyewitnesses claiming this for the Roman imperial, and they're dead. We all know they died. They had apotheosis. They were divinized. They became gods. And so like the whole squabble over Jesus spending, 4 or 5 hours on earth before he spends all eternity in heaven, or decides he's going to spend 40 days in Acts, that's nothing. Because if you go to the Christians now, right, where's he at? Oh, he's in heaven. Oh, great. Like everyone else. So like this little blimp, they make a big deal out of these appearances to the point where if you can't find this exact narrative of a post-mortem appearance engagement with cult members, therefore, I mean, this is unique and believable compared to all the other claims of the divinized people who had post-mortem experiences and stuff like that. That's absurd to me. That just doesn't cut it.
By the way, as far as Aeneas goes, even though I mentioned already that after he becomes Jupiter indigenous, he doesn't actually say he comes back after that in Ovid's source, but in Virgil's Aeneid, where Virgil's Aeneid doesn't have that scene where he's anointed by Venus and all this stuff happens, but it does have his descent into the underworld and his rising back up again. And it was well known that is basically makes you a god by doing that feat. It was known in antiquity that those who go down to the underworld do not return.
Right. Mortals do not. Yeah.
And it's almost seen as a metaphor of death itself, especially in Euripides' what is it? Frogs. In the text the play called Frogs, Dionysus and Hercules are on their way down to the underworld. Do you know how they get there? They commit suicide. They have to die to go. I'm not kidding. Look this up. They have to take Dionysus is asking Hercules, what's the best way to do it? He's like, I think the best way to do it is just drink some poison. And they're like, what? They're not going down in some cave somewhere. They're dying.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back. That's in Frogs. Okay, so back to Dionysus though, because this is the biggest thing that people miss, is this whole background of the Dionysian of the time of the 1st century. Now, this is like, I think a good mirror to look at is the Serapis cult, where the Serapis cult is taking a bunch of cults, like the cult of Hades, the Eleusinian mysteries. They even according to some sources, they took in priests from the Imalpid clan, which is the family that reigns at Eleusis, that holds the priestly class. They took some members from the Eumolpid clan and brought them down to Alexandria to run the Serapis cult. And then he gets like, they throw in Asclepius traits. He's a healer god. He holds the caduceus and all that stuff. But he's also very Dionysian.
Well, that's historical. So make sure you address how literal this stuff is that you're talking about right now, because this happened. Please continue.
Well, the cult is historical. The cult
Yeah,
is
I know.
historical.
I'm talking about the myth, bro. This
Yeah.
really happened, bro. Come
We
on.
don't really have, it's weird because we don't really have like Serapis text. It's
I'm
mostly
just
just
being
the
funny.
cult. Yeah. But anyways, there's this idea of Dionysus becoming more of a philosophical and more of a less of a orgiastic god and more towards a rational, like a logos type of god. And let me just show you some definitions real quick, if you don't mind. I got some screens that I want to share.
Is it showing?
Nothing yet.
Did you share it?
Yeah, I'm sharing it right now. There it is.
There we go.
So a Baccheo, right? This is the celebrate the mysteries of Bacchus, right? This is the traditional definition of Baccheo, right? Casual, inspired with frenzy, initiate into the Bacchic mysteries, right? You got all these sources that are pretty much saying the same thing about what this means. However, when you get into not just Plato, but there's Bacchaea, right? There's another, this word is used in a different sense when the Orphics and Platonists get a hold of it. I should say mostly Platonists. But I also found a Pythagorean, this girl named Arignote. She was a disciple of Pythagoras, and she lived in Greco Major. What is it called again? Magna Graecia,
yeah.
which is southern Italy.
I'm like, huh?
And she came up with this idea of the idea that a philosopher is a Bacchus, and Plato takes this on too. So Plato, if you can see down,
pull that source, because it's interesting. It's translating it there as the madness and frenzy of philosophy.
Of philosophy.
But it's not philosophia, it's philosophos in the text that they're citing. These philosophumanias tekevakias. So it's actually of the philosopher, not of philosophy.
Yes.
They've translated it that way.
Yes. Now check this out. This is from Symposium. One of the most famous texts of all time. One of the great. If you haven't read it yet, you should. It's so good. It's so good. Like, what is love? Why is Eros the most mightiest god of all? They debate on that stuff. It's amazing. I love it. It's one of my favorite. So in this, they describe Socrates himself and all the rest of them, and every one of you had his share of philosophic. That's what Steven said. It's different. It's a philosophic frenzy, right? Is that how you translate it?
Well, it's just of the philosopher.
Yeah, philosophic frenzy. Yeah. So this is a different kind of Bacchic frenzy. It's a rational philosophic inspiration. It's this idea of the logos.
It's like you're saying, just so I correctly understand this and the audience is tracking, you're saying what we understood the frenzy to be before was like going crazy, orgiastic, drunk, getting drunk and acting wild, or at least assuming they were drunk, which, by the way, Euripides acts like they're drunk, but they're not, according to the story, just like the book of Acts talks about with the Holy Spirit falling on them and they're accusing them of being drunk. That's a whole nother thing. But in this, you're saying this is the philosophical mind, and almost like you and I have the muse where we get excited and we're on fire for learning. We're passionate
on fire for reason and rationality.
Okay.
On fire for the truth. Aletheia was a big concept in Platonism. These concepts, these forms, ideas, whatever you want to call it, were central to the Platonists, but they're using the Bacchic lens, I guess you'd say lens, or like backdrop. They're like describing it as a Bacchic thing, philosophic frenzy to become. So it's not just Plato. This becomes a central doctrine in Platonist. So you can look up Proclus, you can look up Iamblichus, Damascius. There's a whole bunch of Middle and Neoplatonists. Alcinous is another one who who rip off this, and that they'll constantly point out that a good philosopher is a Bacchus. So keep that in mind when you're reading John, which is the most philosophically informed gospel of all. It starts right off. It retells Genesis through a Platonist lens. In the beginning was God, and God was the Logos, and in him was Zoe, all that stuff.
Right.
In John, you have the most obvious mimesis happening, where Jesus is imitating Dionysus, but he's not doing orgies, and he's not like making people dress up as women like Dionysus does in the Bacchae. He's not doing all that kind of stuff.
Well, he is partying at the wedding. He's getting them super drunk. That at least is one part of it.
But whatever. But my point is, he is a Logos. He is a different type of Bacchus. He's the Platonist Bacchus. That's why when people talk about Dennis McDonald's work, it's like it just can't be true. There's no way Jesus has had anything to do with Dionysus. One of them is like the devil, and the other one is God. Like you can literally compare, and that's a good comparison. Dionysus is like the devil in a lot of ways. He's this chthonic, horned in a lot of sources. He's horned. He's like this. He's not this like completely righteous being. And by the way, in some Christian sources, he's called the abomination, the abominable one. He's demonic. So yeah, there are Christians who reject Dennis McDonald's work. When they say that, they're correct that these are polar opposites as far as like who these gods are and what they want.
If I can highlight a few points.
But let me just finish my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
But if you look at it through the middle Platonist lens of a Bacchus, all of a sudden it makes sense.
Right.
That's what they're doing here, in my opinion.
I'd like to get Steven's comments on this too. I don't like to hog the talking time here, Steven. I want you to be able to comment here, but I do have a question because you've been really looking at the Greek longer than me and Neal. Obviously, I have barely even began. But Neal has been looking at it for a while, and you've been looking at it for years now, even teaching your kid. When Dennis, which you've met in person, done interviews with you and Jacob Berman, when he writes about this, tell me, like, I don't even know Greek here, but I imagine if you dove into this book and his usage of the Greek and how he thinks, by the way, he's not the only scholar. Mark W.G. Stibe wrote a book called John as Storyteller. He thinks that this is somehow imitating Euripides, or at least John is a tragedy, and it is somehow in the vein of the Greco-Roman Euripidean tradition. In this story, you got the Logos, right? And you go right from the beginning of the Bacchae. It's going to tell you, like, this is a god who's entering the world. He was there with the Father from the beginning, kind of thing. And then some of the interesting overlaps, like in the bosom of the Father, Jesus is in the bosom of the Father, as John seems to imply. Dionysus was literally birthed from the bosom,
from the lap,
from the lap, from the area between the nipples down to the kneecaps. He was born from Zeus, the Father, and this is twice born. The second Dionysus that was born from it after Semele was zapped dead by his glory. His son of God with many names, of course, changing water into wine. We both know that. What also I found interesting is in John, Jesus constantly says, like, I am the water of life. If you drink, he goes to the woman at the well, if you drink my water, you'll never thirst again. And this is a promiscuous woman. In Euripides' Bacchae, the Maenads are accused by Pentheus of running away from their husbands' beds to sleep in other men's beds. In the Euripides' Bacchae, which, by the way, we know the Samaritan woman is accused of having 5 husbands that are not their husband, and you're with one right now. Like, he's telling you, the reader, this is a promiscuous woman. And what does he say in the context? My water, if you drink it, you're never going to thirst again. Well, the Maenads that are in the wilderness in Euripides, they're thirsting to death. They're literally dying of thirst. Dionysus miraculously produces water, wine, and honey in the wilderness. And they have the thyrsus, of course. They strike the ground, and Dionysus' power causes water in the wilderness to come forward. Where's the woman at in the well? In the wilderness. Jacob's well's out here in the wilderness, away from the city. So, like, when you go through piece by piece by piece, is it all coincidental, or is there something going on, bro? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess the question is, do you retreat to the position of this is just in the air, this is just their background? Like any of these authors writing on the level of Greek that they were writing would have had to be familiar with Euripides, right? Like it was just, that was your school. So whether or not it's just influencing them in terms of conventions that they're using and their you know, like storytelling conventions, narrative devices, or whether or not they're just straight like dropping hardcore clues that people are supposed like that their contemporaries would have just immediately recognized as Memesis. You know, it's an open question. I think we could do more content on it. I have looked at it. I've you know, I'm on really good terms with Dr. McDonald, and we talk about it. And I try to defend him in the face of critics who just really rail against him.
Mhm.
I think his work is really important. I can't say that I'm like 100% convinced by everything, but he's not even 100% convinced by everything. So it's like, you do have to just like dig through the primary sources and see like where they line up, where they don't, how they might line up.
There's just so much more too. The prison break scene, the earthquaking and the prison opening. And I mean, it goes, I'm the true vine. Who the hell would not think of Dionysus when they say they are the true vine, bro?
Absolutely. I agree. And that's why, because people have a point when they talk about what are the goals of the Dionysian cult versus what are the goals of Christianity. And like, they're in different directions. They're not the same. But like, that's why I bring up, like, by the time you get to the late 1st century, the idea of Bacchus is not the same as it was in Euripides' time. It is a different, especially when you go through what was happening in Alexandria with Serapis taking over as a major god, not just in Alexandria, but in Pergamum and Syria, the Ion cult. Ion, I didn't even mention Ion yet. Who is Ion?
Oh, God.
Ion is this god who's basically Dionysus and Adonis wrapped together. And it's not just me making this up. This is what the antiquity writers said. Who was it? One of the Neoplatonists, Plotinus, basically describes him as Adonis hyphenated Dionysus. We don't have any myths about him. We just have inscriptions and
we have the zodiac.
You can see what he looks like, but when they describe him, they go, he's like Dionysus and he's like Adonis. And then we do get Epiphanius, who says he's the son of Corey, which is Dionysus.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. And he's like, so Dionysus at this time period is inspiring other gods, not Jesus, but other gods that are more like what the times are asking for. More rationalism, more Platonism, more logos stuff, all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to look at Euripides Dionysus versus Jesus and do that comparison. You can still use the framework of the Bacchae and describe a more rational deity as Jesus is.
Of course. And again, more asceticizing is taking place by this period than what we find earlier. Quick, Stephen, did you want to show something and then we can get these super chats?
Yeah, I did get I noticed a few chats of people who were pointing out when we were talking about Bacchaea, right? And the spirit of the Bacchic frenzy, right?
Yeah.
We have right here in this letter to the Corinthians, Paul kind of trying to get people to walk back a little bit when they're saying like, look, your spiritual gifts are great. Like, you know, the prophecy, you know, like so that you may prophesy. But for the one who speaks in a tongue does not speak to people, but to God, for no one understands. But in his spirit, he speaks mysteries.
Mysteria,
right? We're in that mystery region.
That's a big thing going on.
Yeah, but the one who prophesies speaks to people for edification, exhortation, consolation. So he is saying lalon glossi, right? To speaks in tongues. This is glossolalia, and it's I think in the context here, it's pretty clear what's going on is that the people that he's writing to in Corinth are coming from some prior Greek cult where it was normal to be like habada babada 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 babada, and then
the Dionysian people do that.
Yeah. So like
that's a Bacchic frenzy.
They're either channeling Bacchus or they're channeling Apollo. Those are the two gods that that actually give people the gift of prophecy.
Yay and Yah.
Yeah. And then now that they're jumping ship and they're going to this Jewish cult, and they want to bring this tradition in with them where they can speak in tongues like they do today. And Paul's like, I don't know if this is going to really give our message the way we want. Maybe like you can tell that he's like, I don't want to discourage you.
He's trying to work with them, right?
Yeah. And then also in Acts, if you jump over to Acts 16:16, right? Y'all see this.
By the way, this is crossbible.com.
Yeah, Cross Bible. Take a look at this slave woman who had the spirit of divination. What is the spirit of divination? It is pneuma pythona. It is the python.
Ammon loves this source, by the way. He's the Pythian.
She is clearly a priestess of Apollo.
Yeah, that's what that is.
And she's being, demonized here. Like they want to portray this as like she had an evil spirit in her. But this is the cultural milieu. These are the people who are receiving the Christian gospel and the mystery of Paul's mystery of why it is that God is abandoning the Jews and going to the Gentiles. That's his mystery. It's being the fertile ground there is all of this underlying Greek religion, right? That is their religion that they're converting from. So
that reminds me of how they mistook the two Barnabas and Paul for Apollo and Hermes. I mean, come on, bro.
Yes.
It's wild.
Yeah, and by the way, when you go to Delphi, there's the tomb of Dionysus at the bottom and the oracle of Apollo at the top. So the Dionysus Apollo religion was like right there. The Orphic mysteries, I call it. It's just all that rolled into one. Orpheus was the son of Apollo and the high priest of Dionysus. So you see they're just linked like that. But this brings me to John Kloppenborg's stuff, where he points out that the early Christian ecclesias operated, and you can see this what Stephen just pulled up. He's writing these churches, and they're doing all this weird Bacchic glossalia stuff. But and the archaeology also shows us that the early ecclesias operated almost in the same manner as the Dionysian cult in Athens. They had the same democratic way of doing things. They rotated their jobs. They had like their names written on plaques the same way. Like he's like pointing out, like they look like they're just doing the same thing, but instead of worshiping Dionysus, they're worshiping Christ.
It's pretty obvious, yeah.
And then you go and then look at the earliest catacombs, and there's Orpheus on the wall in the Christian catacombs playing his lyre in the Christian catacombs.
I love the one where Heracles is. They've got one where Heracles is in one of those catacombs, and Jesus has converted Heracles to be a follower of Jesus. So you even have like the myths making the other myths bow down to the myths, and like they're finding a ways to make it complementary. It's really cool. I got a few supers. We got to grab these supers real quick as we go, because this is good. Jesus tells thank you for the super chat, by the way. What would be a valid criticism of McDonald's work in particular? It seems he lays out the Memesis argument well. My criticism is this, and by the way, he probably agree with me on this to some degree. Here's my criticism. It's not even like a bad one. It's just because Memesis is a subjective art. It's an art. It has a science to it, and it can be, especially when you're looking at linguistics and just common parallels in general. But here's the problem. This is my criticism. I can go to a passage, right? Let's take feeding 5,000, right? Now watch the struggle that's about to happen here. The New Testament Gospel, Mark, has them feed 5,000. I think it's 5 or it's 4,500. Either way, it's thousands of people. We know Mark is quoting scripture. He says, thus it is written, the prophet so-and-so says, blah, blah, blah. We know that. It's blatantly advertised that he's quoting a prophet or quoting scripture. So we know Mark knows scripture. Do we know Mark? Like, does he openly advertise that he's using this stuff? No. And people want that open, blatant, I am looking at Homer, or I'm, Hector once did, or the Greek hero. So we wish it did that. It doesn't. So what happens? You can find either Moses, where God blesses and feeds the people of Israel with manna, though it just kind of describes it as a heavenly blessing where manna is given to the people in the wilderness. Or you can go to Elijah. Elijah has a moment where he feeds 100 men, and there's a multiplying of food in order to feed 100 men, not thousands. But then you go to the Odyssey or the Iliad, and you find a blessing where the god, literally, I can't remember who's the player in the myth, feeds thousands of people, not 100 and not just general manna for the people, but thousands, I think 4,500 are almost the identical number. So here's the wrestle or criticism. Where do we go? And Dennis is like, well, it could be eclectic. It could be both sources. The criticism is there's no way to prove a lot of these claims in any strong way of like, it absolutely is not pulling this from scripture. It's got to be pulling it from the Greek text. But there's some texts that are just too obvious, like the foot washing scene with the woman who identifies the master, the Lord Jesus, just like Eurycleia recognizes the man in disguise, Odysseus. So you're not going to find that in Hebrew scripture. So there's much more obvious ones and less obvious ones. That's the only criticism I can give when it comes to Memesis, as far as I can think of right now. Anything you guys want to add, or do we want to move to the next super chat?
I can't. No, I think that was well said.
I mean, my only input on that is just like I want to figure out what the criteria are for what counts as a valid, like direct parallel, indirect parallel. I remember at one point I emailed Dr. McDonald about something that I found that seemed like it could be a parallel, and I wanted his advice on it because he didn't put it in his synopsis. And his response was like, "Oh yeah, this is great. Like I think I'm going to include it." Like it he recognized, I don't remember what example it was, but he kind of gave me some credit and was like, "Oh, good, great discovery." And he's like, "I'll put it in, I'll throw it onto the pile." And that's what made me think, well, I'd be interested to see all of the examples exactly put through a filter, basically, to say what we have high confidence in and low confidence in. Like give it an A rating, a B rating, a C rating.
I can tell you right now what he would say. Or I can guess. I can't say for him because I do the same thing. I call him with my own. Look what I found, and sometimes he shuts it right down. Sometimes,
yeah, he does.
Sometimes he thinks, "Holy shit, good stuff."
Good stuff.
It can go both ways. The sequence of events is what matters the most. Like the sequence of events. Like there's a character who's called the light, and then the character is called the true vine. One of them's called light. One of them's called vine. John isn't the true light. But he's I'll give you I'm just giving a real example from his book. John isn't the true light, but he was one of the lights or
like
something.
The preparer of it, yeah.
And then you have Cadmus isn't the true vine, but he's part of this foliage or something. It describes him as like foliage. Like he's like
rolling
he's
it out.
He's a vine, but he's not the true vine. And then there's the sequence of the characters and what they're doing, even though they're different, the sequence is there. That's what I noticed that he, in particular, is very keen on. Does the sequence line up? That's just one of them. I can't,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chuck, for the super. Great ideas and discussion, gentlemen. Guess I'll have to learn some Greek eventually. Thank you. Steven's your boy. Amen. Trust me. Yeah, you really, we're going to make some things happen here. Okay. Look, and also Ryan has a really, really good comment. Have you tickled the like yet? Make sure you tickle that thing. You gotta tickle the hell out of it. All right, where were we now? We were having a blast going into Dionysus, Orpheus, Ion. Neal, I don't think we've ever discussed this publicly yet.
Odysseus
in the video.
or
no, I'm thinking Epiphanius and the rivers of wine, bro. I mean,
I did videos on this.
Yeah, but you and me, like, I don't think we, in light of the January 6th stuff that we found about the Epiphany of Dionysus, which is in Pliny the Elder.
Yeah.
Then we realized, hold on, the Christians, literally Basilides and early Christians, celebrated the adoption of God, which is birthing a new son technically through adoption at baptism, which is why they conflated birth narratives with the adoption in baptism. They are almost, they're tied together in Christian thought. Like in early Christian thought, when you had this baptism, he then adopts him as a son. I have begotten you. Well, that is exactly what Dionysus has as Epiphany, where he changes water into wine. And this is when they also celebrated the wedding at Cana. So we were wondering, how did Christians really lift this from a tradition of Dionysus? And people are like, man, you're just, all you talk about, man, is Dionysus and Jesus. And you guys have this thing for Dionysus and Jesus. Sorry, when you're focused in on something, you don't think it's observed enough, or people aren't seeing what you're seeing. You want it to be seen at least so people can really understand. So we got into Epiphanius and his Panarion, which is like a medicine kind of antidote. He's trying to help cure all these heresies. The entire book is a shit on other Christian book. It's literally, let me just poo-poo on this Christians and these Christians and those Christians, because he has the right Christianity.
Yeah.
He then concedes after telling them that Jesus was born on this day and that other pagan gods also celebrate these festivals on the same day. Corey with Dusaris and Ion, and which is Dionysus, you know, like we're talking about with Adonis and Dionysus. And then he says that on that day, they gather water.
Mhm.
Are you pulling it up?
I have it right here.
Oh, dude, let me shut up. You take over. Tell him what the hell's going on.
This
bro.
is Epiphanius, and he's talking about this. He talks about the Cana stuff. Up here, he talks about Cana. Right here, he says. Anyway, he's talking about Cana. He brings up the Epiphany, January 5th, the dawn of January 6th. That's very important that he says that. That language, and by the way, he uses the Egyptian month. He doesn't use the Roman month.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's so bizarre that he would use this month, because this is the same exact month that is used by it's not, is it Pliny the Elder? Yes, Pliny the Elder.
Yeah, he used
Pliny the
TV
Elder.
too, I thought, didn't he?
Pliny the Elder, who says the January 5th, the nones of January, which is January 5th, and where this wine miracle happens with Dionysus in Asia, in Naxos, he says. Anyways, when Epiphanius is talking about this happening for the wedding at Cana, so he says the wedding at Cana, January 5th, month of TB, right? And this is what he said. This is so crazy what he says.
This was wild, yeah.
This is the ones who reject John's gospel also have been refuted. He says right here.
Notice it's all in the vein of John's gospel too.
Yeah, exactly. And it says Christ was conceived on the 12th before the calends. I'm just trying to find. He mentions the 11th of Tybee again, so he's repeating himself. I don't know why he does this, but eventually he says this. And this first miracle in Cana of Galilee, when the water was made wine and was performed on about the same 11th day, he repeats himself again.
30 years later, exactly.
Yeah. He says, and this happens in many places, not just one place, as a testimony to unbelievers because of the miracle which was wrought at the time, as streams and rivers in many localities testify, by being changed to wine. The stream at Kibere, the chief city at Caria, Asia Minor, bears witness at the same time of the day at which servants drew the water, and Christ said, "Give it to the governor of the feast." So what is this, some sort of retelling of the Gospels, but not at Cana, at Kibere? What's going on here? This is such a bizarre passage. And the stream at Gerasa in Arabia testifies in the same way. I have drunk from one of Kibere myself. What? This is a saint. This is a Catholic and Orthodox saint. His word is law. I'm just kidding. And my brethren have drunk from the same stream in the martyrium at Gerasa and in the Egypt too.
Is that Gerasene? Is that where they think the Gerasenes were? The Gerasa?
I don't know. Is that what that word means?
I kind of wonder.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
I wonder.
But he's basically saying there's this miracle that happens in all these locations all over the Greek world where water turns into wine on the same day of the year, January 5th to January 6th, and which is so bizarre. You want me to pull up?
If you can, I just want to make the comment about the holy water thing that you and me were completely speculating. Neal's like, you want me to do it? Here. We were completely speculating on, like, what is the origin of this tradition we call holy water and its purifying kind of like attributes. And we were looking at this. They actually would gather water on that day of the year, Stephen, and they would keep it, believing that. All right, Neal, how much did you miss of me?
A lot.
Okay. Oh, you were down here. So we were speculating on this too. While you pull up the Pliny source, which is necessary,
Yeah.
and also we could get the other sources.
Wait,
to
I
talk
have
about
the
rivers.
Pliny source.
Oh, pull that.
Oh,
up.
good, cool.
Yeah, you see this?
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
that's
Is,
right.
is
That's
this
right. We
the
made
Pliny
fun.
source? Because we worked on this. So yeah,
Yes, this is
the water always has the flavor of wine on January 5th, the day
5th,
called
right.
God's gift. It's Theodosia.
Yes, come on, bro. This is before the Gospels are out here floating around. This is by the way, this is the guy. This guy that they're talking about, where's Mucianus? He was 3-time consul with Vespasian. Like that's how big this dude was in
And
the
just
empire.
in case anyone's wondering, Father Liber is the Latin title for Dionysus.
Right.
So just in case anyone's like, so what? What's that to do with Dionysus? That's what it is.
Exactly. And so someone might be going, okay, you nutters. Okay, you nutters. What does this have anything to do with anything? I don't know. I mean, the same damn day, water's
Same
changing
day.
into wine, and the other sources have rivers transforming into wine well
Yeah.
before Jesus.
Yes.
So here's Epiphany saying, on the day that the
Aristotle.
Lord's miracle takes place, the very same day that a miracle takes place with Dionysus and wine and water,
Right.
before the Gospels catch fire in the Greco-Roman world. Come on, what's
and it's
going on?
intoxicating people.
Yes.
But the pushback is going to say, but it doesn't say that the water turned into wine. So
Yeah,
That's-
well,
That's what they say that, and this is back to my point of we've been kind of rehashing throughout this video, is scholars can get like this sometimes, and they're just like, just take a step back and just see the whole page, like see what's going on here. In my opinion,
well, I mean, you're right. The water doesn't say, right, but it does say that a spring of water, like it's a spring where water flows all year round,
has
and
the
in
flavor of
7
wine.
days of the year it turns to wine.
So
So
you
it
just,
has
you just gotta
wine.
use your head and go, it turned into wine. Like I
Yeah,
don't know
there's-
how else to.
Where'd the
When-
water go? I mean, if the water itself doesn't change, where the hell's the water go?
But this reminds me. This reminds me of the Livy passage, where it doesn't say, and then Romulus died, but it does say, and the senators didn't know what happened to him, so they started mourning, and they didn't know they started mourning for him, and then they made him rites. They perform rites to make him a god. You only
Right.
do that for someone who just died.
Yep.
So you can just put 2 and 2 together. They think he's dead. That's it. And then he comes back miraculously. You know what I mean?
Seems pretty obvious to me. Even the one with the Aeneas, where he's like, they're washing him in the river, like in washing away his mortal parts, leaving what's divine.
Right.
Like that's definitely burial ritual, kind of baptismal
the idea
deification.
that somebody can't be inspired by this source because it doesn't say exactly what they wrote is crazy. I
But
mean,
even-
it's like saying George Lucas cannot be inspired by Dune because Dune doesn't mention Han Solo. It doesn't mention Yoda. It doesn't mention, like, the themes are all there, and everyone. This is like a well-known thing that Star Wars is like riffing off of Dune stuff and like rewriting Dune and for like a different universe. But it never tells you that, and it's not explicitly doing that. There is a lot of obvious parallels, but like, you know what I mean? You have to just see it. You have to just know the culture to see it.
And even if let's just suppose generally the influences. Oh, you got a source here. Let me pop this source up, Stephen. What you got here, brother?
Well, this is the
It's the same
earlier reference from what's this? It's a different. It's natural history. So yeah, we have. Is it the same one? No.
Yeah, no,
230 this is 231, and this is
Oh.
an earlier. Yeah. So here
Yeah,
he's actually saying flows wine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Th-
and then before that we had the Aristotle reference where the levitas, right? We were talking about the kinds of
Lebes,
jars.
yeah.
Yeah, it's from leves or levies. And it's 3 empty bronze cauldrons, and the cauldrons end up full of wine. So
Right.
did they have water in them originally, and they
Go-
got turned into wine? No, they
Go back to that Pliny one, real
Pliny,
quick.
yeah.
Yeah, let me show you this. So I love this, right? It didn't change into wine, they say. Give me the explicit. 7 days out of the year, notice it says, festivals of this god flows wine, meaning what's it flow with the other not 7 days? Water. It's a spring.
Right.
It's water, right? So now these 7 days, there's wine. Question.
It's water that is now
Where-
wine.
Right. Where
Yeah.
the hell did the water go, right? That should be a fundamental question if you're going to take this overly literal and expecting no water was said to be turned into wine. But then You go, but if its water is carried out, notice now you have this 7 days of the year. You're walking away from the side of the temple where it's flowing with wine now. It starts to turn or taste like water. The taste turns to that of water. Dude, you got to be like, unless the text says, by the way, the only thing that changes is the accidental here. You know what I mean?
There's another source where Dionysus replaces water with wine. And it's like, I've criticized Dan for pointing out, well, this one says replaced. He didn't change it. What do you think? He came with a water pump and pumped all the water out and then came with a big giant dump truck of wine and dumped it in? Like, you're doing more, you're adding more than we are. I'm not adding anything.
Go to John, go to the wine miracle in John again on Cross Bible, Stephen. I want to do something funny using that same kind of reasoning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it as a critic, right? I'm going to do it as an apologist against the source. Notice I'm literally telling you, I'm putting my cards out on the table. I'm about to make some shit up, ladies and gentlemen, right in front of your eyes. I'm going to do an apologetic to try and make Jesus not actually have fulfilled a wine miracle in the Gospel of John. So, giving you a heads up, I do not literally think this. I, of course, think that this is a miracle account that is claiming water is changed into wine, but I do think it's mythological. Okay, check this out. So go down to...
Which verse?
When they ran out of wine, verse 3, obviously the mother says, look, they have no wine. What's that got to do with me, woman? And of course, this has some affinities with Mark, the way he speaks to his mom, calling her woman that way. There's scholars who point out that has connections to Mark. His mother said to the servants, whatever he tells you, do it. Now there were 6 stone water pots standing there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 2 or 3 measures each. Jesus tells them to fill the water pots with water, so they filled them to the brim. But listen, Jesus didn't fill them. Okay? Jesus didn't fill them. So maybe they actually just filled them with wine to begin with and not water. Here's my point. I'm making up shit. I can do whatever I want to make up whatever I want to make this text not be what it seems to be implying here.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
And then he says to them, draw some out and take it to the head waiter. Notice he doesn't have his hands on anything. He just tells them to draw some water into the water pot. How do we know that they only drew from water? How do we know? How do we know that maybe they weren't pulling out wine? If you take this literal historical, right? How do you know that that was water they drew and they didn't just fill them up with wine already? Then they take it to the head person. Notice how stupid it would sound if I tried to make that argument. Now, if you take this literal historical, then yeah, I could run with something like, come on, dude. This is like a trick. They're tricking the audience to make them think. But no, I think it's a mythic story that is just showing the divine nature of Jesus, because the God man that's present, his epiphany, his powers are being shown. That's what you do. And what happens? Water turns into wine when the God is present. Just like Dionysus, when he shows up at the 7 days of the year, according to Pliny the Elder, the water transforms into wine. It's that obvious to me. Anyone who wants to get pedantic, this is obviously too sensitive for them. They're concerned about how much this looks like Jesus, and the implications are staggering for anyone who's a fundamentalist or literally needs these narratives to be historically true, in my opinion.
What do you think of the rebuttals that get produced in the form of cartoons where they have Jesus going around saying, I don't want to change water into wine because I don't want to tip my hand that I'm ripping off of Dionysus. Dionysus already did that. It seems a little childish. I don't know. It seems to me like the audience receiving this gospel of John, let's just run with the idea that they're already familiar with this trope from the Dionysian cult. This is the stuff that this is what their kind of a God does. It turns water into wine. So when Jesus comes along and performs this miracle, this is clearly a tool that is designed to convert people who have that background, who recognize that, like who value this sort of thing. And they say, oh, Jesus is like better than my God. Right. If this were a new thing, they'd never heard of this, like turning water into wine thing or just producing wine miraculously. If this were not floating in the air, it wouldn't be compelling to them. They'd be like, that's a weird thing to do.
Or they think, oh, this one really happened, but maybe mine didn't.
Yeah.
Like something like that. Yeah.
Because this is historical, because he did these signs so that you may believe. That is the gospel of John. So I think if you really transport yourself there and you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's receiving this gospel, and you see this Jewish deity doing all of this stuff but better, like that should actually like kind of pull on your heartstrings a little, and you'd be like, oh wow, like maybe this is the true religion. This is the new thing that I
think
believe.
You're right with the better part, in light of the fact that Dionysus only fills 3 empty jars, Jesus fills 6. Double the portion of what Dionysus does according to Aristotle and these other stories. But there might be a mishmash of Dionysus stuff. I see that Neal has something.
I got a crazy source that's going to tie it all together. That makes it so hard to deny this.
Okay.
And this is such a random, it's such a random thing that he says here. This is same text, Epiphanius. I didn't read this before, but it's just a little bit above. I have it in my notes here. You can check, you can, look up Epiphanius 29:1 from a Panarion. I have the notes right here. So right before he mentions the source that I already read this one.
Mm-hmm.
But right before that, he says something very strange. He said, I noticed too that those who have given a date for the conception and Gabriel's bringing of the tidings to the Virgin have said this because of supposition of certain persons who have it by tradition. This was a tradition somewhere in early Christianity, that Christ was born after a term of 7 months. Right?
Mm-hmm.
For I found that there is time of 7 lunar months, 4 less days, mentioned that the 11th of Tybee, January 5th, when in fact the Epiphany came and Christ was born. All right? So you have this word Epiphany. I should bold this. Epiphany comes, and watch this. Ready? The next time, there's another source from Diodorus of Sicily from 50 BCE, a century before the Gospels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is probably a hot text at the time, where he talks about the birth of Osiris. But guess what he says? Cadmus, who was a citizen of Egyptian Thebes, not Greek Thebes. Wait a minute. Cadmus, that's the uncle of Dionysus,
yes,
of whom Semele, this is the mother of Dionysus, was violated by an unknown person and gave birth to a child
and
who's
after
Osiris.
7 months.
But check this out. She was violated by a person after 7 months. Gives birth to Osiris. So it's Dionysus's mom, just like Ion is Dionysus's mom too, right? It's different gods, same mom. Osiris is born of Semele after 7 months, and he even uses the word Epiphany.
Yep.
He says, when Cadmus found out what had taken place, having at the same time replied from an oracle, commanding him to observe the laws of his fathers, he both gilded the infant and paid it the appropriate sacrifices on the ground that there had been a sort of epiphany of Osiris among men.
You know what that is, though, right? That's the demons who knew beforehand that Christ was coming.
Yeah. That's what they said, too.
I know.
They actually used that. They actually made that argument. But like,
ridiculous.
But think about this for a second. Like, I get it. There's a grape scene happening here. That's not a divine. That's not a virgin birth. There's differences, obviously.
Of course.
But how specific is it that you have a 7-month term and it uses the term epiphany? Now, is
a birth of Dionysus Osiris, which is pretty much the same thing in these authors' minds. They're practically the same kind of god.
And so is Epiphanius talking about the Gospels when he says 7 months? No, he's obviously talking about some sort of
Christian tradition,
some alternate Christian tradition that's floating around. But that's the point, is I'm trying to get to the earliest layers of Christianity to try to figure out what Christianity is. You don't go to the 4th century church fathers. You go to the 1st century. And this is what they're talking about,
Yeah, dude. I love this kind of stuff, just kind of finding those nuggets, because we get the water into wine, which, specifically on that day, we have rivers changed to wine, which we didn't pull up those sources, but we have like a wedding where Ariadne and Dionysus are getting married. And there's the streams now flow with wine. Where'd that water go? All this.
Yeah.
Anyway, But that's a common trope that you even find in Dionysiaca. Isn't that how you pronounce it? The Dionysiaca?
Dionysiaca.
Dionysiaca.
The stress is on the end, so it's not Dionysiaca. Okay. It's like Dionysiaca. It's like Papa.
Anglicized is right, though.
Either way.
I don't know. I think, okay, let me give it my best anglicization. It would be Dionysiaca. Maybe, I don't know. The stress is wrong, but we don't really have any rules.
That's what Derek said.
Derek was asking my feedback as his Greek teacher how he should pronounce it.
I thought you were asking for the anglicized. My bad.
No.
I would look. I mean, I would flex and I would say yesterday when I was reading the Dionysiaca, but that sounds pedantic. So you could just say like I was reading the Dionysiaca. It's a hard thing for me to put my American brain on and say like
Dionysiaca,
because it's not Dionysus. It's Dionysos for me, or Dionysos. So it's like Dio, is because it's like that's in it's theophoric.
You know what it is for Paola? It's Dionysus. She'll say it in English. She'll go Dionysus. When she says it in English, of course, she's going to
because we say Dionysus because we say Y like I, but it's it's upsilon, right? It's epsilon. Right. So I say Dionysos or Vachos, and I say Dionysiaca is the name of that book, the Dionysiaca.
Look, Jesus tells in here trying to get us in trouble with the mythicists now. Look at you, Jesus. Come on, brother. No, thank you so much for the super chat. I love the work, all three of you guys. What sort of historical Jesus do each of you think is the needle in this massive haystack of mythology?
Look, I when you look at the stories about Zoroaster actually is one of them. I didn't mean to say him. Pythagoras and stories about Apollonius of Tyana, stories about even Caesar and Alexander the Great. They're heavily mythologized, mostly mythology, very little history sometimes. To me, Jesus looks like another example of that. The reason why is because he doesn't start off mythological and become historical. Like there's no like myths of the Jesus character. It's like he starts off in Paul's letters. It's some like rumors of some guy that is the Christ, and then the Gospels get written afterwards. It's a backwards. It's not your typical what's the word when a mythology becomes history. It's not the typical of that.
This is a tough. I really don't
get me wrong though. It's mostly I think there's so much mythology that I don't even blame the mythicists sometimes.
Right, I get it. My thing is with where I'm at, which if I'm making all of this ultimately would be a guess based on my research here. I tend to think he would have been an apocalypticist in light of the fact that the earliest movement is at the edge of the history, at the end of history. I do think he was an apocalypticist, but that doesn't mean he wasn't also a philosopher that had an apocalyptic, outlook. So I know many think he's a Torah reformer. There's all sorts of different positions, which got him into trouble. He's running around telling Jews, sorry, that's not right. And he's reforming the way that people interpret the Torah, but he's also like kind of jabbing at the temple, functions, which gets him into trouble with Rome and ends up getting him crucified. But I don't really know what the actual case can prove at the end of the day. What is your thoughts, Stephen?
I'm just distracted by all of the firestorm I started in the chat over pronunciation. All the nerds are coming out of the woodwork. I think that the biggest clues for me for the trace, reconstructing a historical Jesus is the conflict that we clearly see between the original Torah observant movement of whatever the core cult was, and then the later innovation of Paul and his mystery, his gospel. He calls it his gospel, right? His gospel that is now going out to the nations or the Gentiles, ta ethne, right? And that, I think that transition and the evidence we have in the Bible that was a rough transition, that clearly points to me towards a historical Jesus, because you have Paul making many references that I understand. I know all the arguments, all the mythicist arguments that Paul's vague and Paul is getting these revelations and that he didn't personally know Jesus before his death. I get that. But, we'll maybe do some content focus on this later on so I can explain it in more detail. I think he's clearly talking about a dude who knew some other dudes who he knows, and he's in conflict with them, and he doesn't really have the license to just completely take over the whole religion and reinvent it. He's bringing some money back to Jerusalem. He's appeasing the old guard, but he's running with a new version of it that's going out to the nations. And there's a whole theological reason for that. And I just don't see how a purely celestial Jesus that had no grounding in reality. I don't think that is viable based on just the evidence of just Paul alone. Even if you ignore the Gospels,
Right.
I think Paul clearly has a historical Jesus who is now speaking to him directly from the beyond.
And some of the arguments have been like so easily debunked, but you still hear them just get repeated. Like one of them, the archons thing.
Yeah.
Archon means ruler or governor. That's it. So like Pluto is an archon of Hades, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean every time you hear the word archon? Because if you read Plutarch, for example, let's see, do I have Plutarch over here? It doesn't matter. You flip to any page of Plutarch. He starts off his chapters with during the archonship of Demetrius, during the archonship of Cassander, during the archonship of. Does that mean they're demons? No, the word does not. It's just like an Ammon Hillman thing. The word they find one example of archons being used for demons, and then they go and reapply that to the other places where it's not being used that way. It's an Ammon Hillman methodology that mythicists do. Archon does not mean demon; it just means ruler. That one gets debunked, and you still repeat. Another one. I just recently I tuned in for 2 seconds to a debate that was on Jacob Berman's stream, and I love Aaron Adair. I think he's brilliant. But I heard him say it again. Oh, who says he's born of a woman? Who talks like that? And then John shakes his head. The Jews do.
Yeah.
We have dozens of sources of them using this term. I mean, how many times do I got to repeat that? They don't.
Yeah.
It's just, whatever.
Well, and I understand in their pushback on that. If I channel them, they're going to say, well, it's because whenever the Jews use it and they translate it into Greek, they use the verb yeno, which means to give birth, physical birth, right? Yenome is the middle passive. And Paul uses this really special word. He has this special vocabulary where he uses the word ginomai or ginome, which means to appear or to become or to come into existence. And to be frank, this has all been hashed out in commentaries. If you read Douglas Moo's commentary on Romans, Douglas Moo points this out, that first of all, ginome is used all the time and in the Septuagint to refer to people's birth. So if you want to say a genito or a genito for somebody who was born, it just means when they came into being. When my son came into this world, I named him blah, blah, blah. You can say that, and it doesn't, like, nobody's gonna be like, wait a minute, when your son was manufactured, like the manufacture thing just doesn't work. It is actually pretty mundane language, but I do believe that there is a specific reason. I do think that I give credence to the idea that Paul is very deliberate in using the term ginome for Jesus, because when he says in Philippians 2 that, like, he became flesh, like he's describing the descent and this sort of Jesus taking form, that's what he means. So when he says that he came from a woman, he doesn't say he was born, a Yenithi, like he was generated from the womb of a woman. He says that he came into being because he's referring, in my opinion, Paul is referring to the incarnation of Christ through the vessel of a human womb. He's not particularly interested in bringing Jesus down to the level of somebody who had a mundane birth. I think he believes that Jesus is actually becoming incarnate, but he's still being born. Right. Like, and the fact that he uses the word ginome, it's just not strong enough.
That's what like Suetonius views about Augustus. When Augustus is dead now and they're looking back at it, it's always after the fact when the guy's gone and deified. He's looking back and he's like, dude, you were Apollo in the flesh. Like, they literally, I don't know the language here, what the term is used, but the implications are staggering. Pythagoras is the same thing. Augustus, they thought that they were these divinities in the flesh. So it's not
the life of Pythagoras was written by Iamblichus in the way late in antiquity. It's 100% myth. There's like no history in there at all. Right. It's like he's like doing miracles. The animals are talking to him. He's like Dr. Doolittle. It's just completely mythology. It doesn't happened, bro. Maybe Pythagoras didn't exist. There might be a case to be made, but like they're not. the person who wrote that doesn't think Pythagoras. They think he existed,
Right.
and they're still writing mythology about him. You don't have, so it doesn't. That's okay. You get my point.
Yeah. Look, I gotta tinkle here soon. So the question is, do you guys have some more unburdening you'd like to do, and I can run to the bathroom, or
Are there other super chats, or did we get through them?
I thought we got through them, did we?
Okay, good.
I thought you were going to bring up. You could go to the bathroom if you want, but I thought you were going to bring up the Odysseus one that you.
Oh gosh.
You kind of discovered this one. And I was like, how did I miss this?
I could bring it up and then just let you take over and do some other deep
I
dives.
can do my best at it. Yeah, I could I could try to explain it while you're going to the bathroom.
If you want, yeah, it's a fun one. Just comparing
it's
Moses.
in the Odyssey.
Do you want you need the book? I should probably send you the book and then
Bruce
you just share
Loudon?
the screen.
Yeah, it's not in this Bruce Loudon book. It's in a different Bruce Loudon book.
Yeah.
This is also one of the great Bruce Loudon books. He's got a whole bunch of them. He was great. But he points out that Odysseus is with his men, and I forgot where they are. They're somewhere. They're somewhere. Who knows? I have to pull up the text and find it. They're in some island somewhere, and he goes off by himself to go pray for 30 days. I think it is.
I thought it was. Yeah.
Yeah. 30 days.
I just sent you the book.
It's not 40 days like Moses.
I sent you the book on Messenger.
Yeah, but I don't know where it is in the book, so I have to.
Last chapter, I think, something like that.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to explain it real quick. I don't think it's like there's only a few details.
I'll be back.
But once you notice it, it's so big. So Odysseus goes and he prays by himself for 30 days, and he leaves his men. By the way, keep in mind, they left from their hometown to go to a foreign land, and they're on their way back to, you could consider to be the promised land. It's the land of their promise to go back to, right? But as they're going back home, in many ways, Moses represents the Israelites going down into Egypt and returning back home, right? Jacob's from that land. They're going back home, right? Okay. Odysseus leaves. He goes and prays by himself in like deep meditation for 30 days. And he gets the oracle from God, from Apollo, and he there's all this stuff that he's told to do and he needs to go do. When he comes back, what does he find? His men had eaten the sacred cattle of Helios that they were not supposed to eat. It was a big violation. This big holy cattle that cannot be consumed because they're consecrated by Helios himself. Helios is the witness of this, and they all are killed for this, except for Odysseus. Which, if you look at the book of Genesis, Moses goes and prays for 40 days and 40 nights up on a mountain by himself as they're returning back to the promised land, just like Odysseus is. And when he comes back, they're not eating a sacred cattle, but they're worshiping a brazen calf, which is like, okay, it's a different thing, but it's there because you can see the parallel. I think Bruce Loudon's onto something there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Like that's Bruce Loudon is like the proto Dennis McDonald in so many ways. His book right here, Greek Myth in the Bible, he talks about like the comparison between Jason and Jacob, which I think is interesting. I don't know if he says anything about their name. I don't think he gets into that. But that's an interesting like coincidence because Jason, Hera, and Medea and Ates is very much parallel to Jacob, Rebecca, Rachel, and Laban.
I got this book open too for you, just so you.
Okay, yeah, I explained the whole Odysseus thing and Moses.
There's so much more that we're missing, by the way. If you haven't read it,
that's this book right here that you have.
Yeah,
right
that's this. Yeah. I just pulled this one up for you, but I'm saying in that when you and me are explaining the comparisons between Moses,
go to 86. Go to 86.
Page 86.
Yeah.
Let me do this.
He has like a quick little notes thing in there that you can like we can show them real quick. It's not the whole, we can't read the whole thing, but the parallels are there. They're there. Like you could see page 86.
Okay, is this it?
Yeah. Now go down, keep going. You're gonna see the notes. Keep going. Right there, those dots. So you have a dispute over the inheritance of the land. You know, Jason is feuding with Aetes in Colchis over the fleece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the inheritance of his land back in Greece. The young male protagonist is morally ambiguous. Okay, that's kind of a broad one. Authoritative female directs his journey. Medea, and then is it Rachel or which one is it?
Rachel. You talking about
Rachel, yeah.
There's more than one though where they get the mandrake
is it Rachel or is it Rebecca?
Jacob's wife's.
But no, that's the one that I was going to say is the most striking out of all of them. Medea and Rachel both use the same drug, mandrake root, to do their magic, which is like, what the hell? But yeah, so there you go. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of the hero executes his labors aided by magic. Aetes is so much like Laban. Aetes is like this
deceiving. He's a trickster.
He will not let him go. Jason wants to go back home, and Aetes is like, no. If you're gonna marry my daughter, you're gonna stay in my kingdom, and you're gonna do what I say, and you're gonna do all these things before you can leave.
He chases him for the golden fleece. Yeah.
And then he finishes all his tasks, and Aetes is like, nope, you got to do this now. Now you got to go fight this bull. Now you got to go fight the dragon. Now you got to do this. But then in Genesis, Laban is just like that. He's like, oh, you think you can get away from me, Jacob? No, you can't do that. You got to stay here. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do this. You got to do that. Marry my other daughter. Marry this daughter.
It's funny. I think Loudon brings up this idea that in Jason's case, the daughter of Aetes is trying to get the golden fleece, and they end up sneaking off with it. Like they end up retrieving it and running away with it. And in the myth of Jacob and Rachel, of course, and his wife, they sneak off with the idols of Laban. And of course, she says, "Well, it's my time of the month. I'm on my period. I can't get up." But she's hiding his idol with her, so he's chasing after the ritual, the divinity, if you will, the most important iconic figure there. In this one, it's the idols. In the Jason Argonautic one, it is looking for the golden fleece. Dude, there's so much stuff that parallels and has commonality. It blew my mind. Even Jacob wrestling with God all night, he parallels and finds in the Argonautic myth. They wrestle, which, by the way, is a common Greek, thing to wrestle. Yeah. But even Gilgamesh is wrestling Enkidu. So there's a lot of cool, fun stuff you can look at.
But you know what? You know what I thought about with that when I was reading this? This would make a good Lady Babylon episode. He should be all over this. This is where he should be doing, digging into Medea and Rachel, the mandrake root. Is there's drugs involved?
Yep.
This is right up his alley right here.
Yep. Absolutely, bro. Okay, I just showed that one. Then I got this one, of course, is the one you brought up with the parallels. Again, we're not going to have time to get into all this stuff, but I wish he was still alive. Imagine what he would be writing by now. I mean, he's been gone for 4 or 5 years now. He was seeing all sorts of nuggets. But he compares the Odyssey with the myth of Joseph, which I covered a little bit of this briefly at the end of my recent documentary. The Theophany, that's the Abraham, the apocalyptic scene with Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham and the Odyssey. Helen and Rahab, Menelaus and Jacob. The creation myth, he goes into different creation myths, of course. That's the one that you're talking about right here. Argonautic myth, Odysseus and Nausicaa, Circe, Jason and Medea, and Jacob and Rachel. That's a chunk of a passage there. He covers Odyssey, really the Odysseus myth with Jonah, and they both encounter, what's the Greek word for the sea monster? The Kitos? Kitos?
Is that what it is?
A sea monster?
Yeah,
like Leviathan?
I'm talking about the general Greek word for a sea monster. I think it's like Kitos or something in the Greek myth.
I may be blanking on what word you're looking for. Oh, Kitos. Yeah, Kitos. Sorry. Yeah,
look,
so
I got some knowledge here.
No, it's actually Katos in ancient Greek. So
it's Kitos. Well, between Derek and me, it's Kitos, but yeah, it's Katos.
You moderners.
You're about to be pissed, Neal.
But this is actually where the current, if you want to refer to a whale in modern Greek, you can refer to it as a phalena, but they also have Kitos. It is now the term for a whale.
Well, the Septuagint, The Septuagint uses Kitos, and so does the Argonautic, so does the Odyssean, so does bro. There's so many myths.
And guess how you say whale in Russian?
Troy. Katos Troikos is the Trojan sea monster.
Yeah, and guess how you say whale in Russian?
Ketos.
Kit.
Kit.
They also inherited it that way. Yeah.
You know the whole thing about what's the sea goddess name from Mesopotamia?
Oh snap!
Starts with a T. Tiamat.
Tiamat? Yeah.
Tiamat. You got Tiamat, and then you got Tehom in Hebrew, which means like deep blue or whatever, or deep, watery deep or something like that. But Tethys there's some commentary on the name Tethys as like an adopted word that the Greeks adopted from the Near East that might be related, even though it's not the same. It doesn't have the M sound, but the T, just having the T there, people are going, because she has the same function in Hesiod. You have this Tethys goddess who's the primordial deep water sea goddess.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's legit,
Look, thoughts on Eshman and Christ. You're
El Wasaba. El Wasaba. Is that how you say it?
Isn't that the Ewa that isn't that what early church father was saying that they chant?
Yeah. Yep. That's Clement of Alexandria, where he says he links the chant Ewa to Eve in the Old Testament. Heva. He does.
Yep.
Just for me, thoughts on Eshman and Christ.
That's gotta be you, because honestly,
I did 2 videos. I've done 2 videos on this, so thank you for the super chat. Eshman is a very shadowy figure from Lebanon, from the Phoenician. He's a Phoenician god. He's found all over the Mediterranean. The Carthaginians worshipped him. He's even found in Italy. They found a text called the Pyrgi tablets, and the tablets have Latin and Punic on it. So it's binary. Latin on one side, Punic on the other. And on the Latin side, it mentions Asclepius and Venus. On the on the Punic side, it mentions Eshmun and Astarte. So, and to the Romans, he was Asclepius. Okay, he's a healer god for some reason. But to other sources, he's exactly like Adonis and Attis. I'll tell you why. The myth that we have, and it's handed down from a late antiquity, so it's probably filtered through Hellenistic theology somehow. It's not like, it might not be as old as like the Phoenicians, because his name shows up in Phoenician inscriptions on tombs. Ashmanazar was the king of Phoenicia, or the king of Tyre, in like 700 BC. Ashmanazar means Ashman saves, or Ashman helps. That's his name. Anyways, and then on his tomb it says like Ashman save me, Astarte save me, all that stuff. Anyways, when we get, the only myth we have about him comes from Damascus, who's a Neoplatonist from late antiquity, who says that Ashman was a mortal or a demigod who was the 8th son of Zadok, which means righteous, like Melech Zadok, Melchizedek, right?
Yeah.
So that's his God's name. He's Zadok, and he has 8 sons. First, he has 7 sons. They're called the Kaberoi. The 8th son is this special savior god named Eshmun, and as the story goes, that Astarte, who's Venus, falls in love with him, just like Adonis and Venus. You get the Adonis. That's why I said Adonis. You get the Venus and Adonis story. He castrates himself like Attis, bleeds out and dies. And then Astarte anoints him or does whatever ritual that Venus always does, just like we just read with Odysseus or with Aeneas. He rises up and becomes what Damascus describes as the Asclepius of Beirut. That's what he says. And he races. So he gets killed from castration like Attis. He falls in love with Venus like Adonis. And he becomes deified like Asclepius. So it's a really weird late antiquity story of an ancient Iron Age god. And then there's another source from Herodian, who says that up until like the late 3rd century, like in the 200s,
Common era.
there were people pilgrimaging. Romans were pilgrimaging to Beirut to visit his temple. He was a popular Roman god all the way in late antiquity.
And I want to geek out on this username too. So Ewa, right? It has like a circumflex accent over the upsilon. So that would imply that the alpha is short, right? No breathing mark on it. So it's not really like, I don't know what spelling convention this would fit into. So it's you either need a smooth breathing under that circumflex accent to make the alpha short, or I think it's the Bacchic chant, Ewa, right? Like Eva. Yeah. And then Savao.
Sabao is also Bacchic chant too.
I don't know what would give the omega a circumflex accent in Sabao. Saboy, like would have the circumflex accent. If it's Savaoth, like from the Hebrew, that would be an acute accent, and it would be a capital S. So I don't know. It's an interesting derivation. Like I looked it up to try to figure out like what is that name coming from. In there are Greek magical inscriptions, like
that's what I was going to say.
Magical charms.
It's PGM
that have Iao Savao
with
no theta at the end. So that seems to be legit. But I would question the spelling of this without any breathing mark over the vowel, and and also just one note for someone in the chat. I do not believe that Epsilon, what I call Epsilon, what some people call Upsilon, ever went through a transitional stage where it faded back into a schwa. I think it was always a front vowel E with lip rounding. The lip rounding went away in some regions as early as like the 2nd century BC, and it became E. And that's what we call Eoticism, where the upsilon, the U, and the A merged into E and created a lot of confusion and necessitated the creation of new pronouns. But I don't believe it was ever schwa. I would like to see a source for that. I've never seen that, but that was what was put in the sort of people arguing about that in the chat. So that's my opinion on that. I don't think upsilon was ever schwa. I don't think that's a thing. But
yeah,
I'd be glad to be proven wrong if somebody could point out some scholarship that points to that direction.
Yeah.
Corey Kreider, thank you for the super. I appreciate it, my friend. What ancient stories would you guys recommend for telling around a campfire?
What stories would I recommend for telling around a campfire? Shit, I don't know. Why not the classics? Why not crack open the classics, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of
what's the first one you would tell from the ancient world? The Argonautica, you can't go wrong with the Argonautica. That is an amazing story. It has so many little twin twists and turns, and then you have so many characters. You have Hercules, you have Orpheus, you have Jason, you have Medea, you have your witch, you have everything. All the elements are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was recently turned on to Heliodorus's Ethiopica.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of obscure, but I wasn't familiar with it before I started doing this Ammon Hillman research, because he's writing in the 2nd century BC, and he tells it's a really fascinating romance between this like woman and a prepubescent young boy called Neaniskos, who is like basically like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like they get captured by bandits, liste, or leistai. And the bandits like see this dude and they're like, whoa, this guy must be like a descendant of Achilles because he's so buff. And it's like, it's a really interesting read, like this Ethiopica. Do you have it there?
Yes. So if you want
Heliodorus.
If you want to read these stories, but what he just talked about, Collected Ancient Greek Novels by B.P. Reardon. Now, let me just show you what's in here. It's a one-stop shop for so many classic sources. This is what you get. You get Chariton, Xenophon of Ephesus. You get Ephesian Tale, Leucippe and Clitophon, Longus, Daphnis and Chloe, Acacia's Tilly, Heliodorus, an Ethiopian story, Pseudo Lucian, the ass, Lucian, a true story, Pseudo Callisthenes, the Greek Alexander romance. You'd have to, it's a must read. A bunch of anonymous stuff and a bunch of fragments from different authors. It's big and it's got so much good. It's got a bunch of classics in here. But yeah, that's one of the ones in here. Ethiopica, Ethiopian story.
I
There are a lot of
personally,
nuggets. There are a lot of nuggets in antiquity, right? Like just things
Oh,
you
yeah.
dig out that like people never talk about, and they're like, "Wow, this is amazing literature." Like,
Yeah.
if you haven't, and I just say this as another story, if you haven't read Gilgamesh, like the Epic of Gilgamesh,
That's
that
great.
is a must. I mean, you literally are missing out on life if you have not actually heard this story of an ancient king who's searching for a way out of mortality and cannot get out no matter what. And when he gets so close to getting something that gives him at least a remedy to mortality, at least temporarily, that even falls short. And so it's such an amazing, ancient epic. If you haven't read it, you really should.
Aristophanes is also like amazing. Was an amazing storyteller. Like frogs, I mentioned earlier, frogs, birds. Aristophanes is one of the classics. They were all living around at the same time. Aristophanes was alive. Euripides was alive. Plato, Socrates, something like there's just all the end of the 5th century, early 4th century BCE. There's just a fucking 30 world famous household names living at the same time in Athens in one city. It's just not crazy to think about that.
This is the other thing I like, just to wrap up the super chat here. And, you know, if you guys want to talk about something else, feel free. I've got a little bit more time. I recommend rereading the Bible. Okay. Rereading it now, though, with the knowledge, and bring with it that kind of cool critical lens that we have. Yeah. You might be like, dude, this is actually pretty cool, because there's so many cool stories in the Bible once you read them without the bubble.
One of the things I've been doing recently, I'm just reading Johannine literature. So I'll read John, and then I'll go right to the Apocalypse or Revelation, and then I'll go to the Johannine letters just to only hear from the Johannine perspective, and you can see a different Christianity when you just do it that way. That's another interesting thing you can do. You can just try to hone in on certain parts of the Gospels that are supposed to be written by one particular person for one particular audience, and just kind of isolate them, and then think, if you don't presuppose all the other stuff from the other Gospels, what are you left with? And you can see these are different Christianities.
Yeah.
And that phenomenon, the phenomenon that Neal touched upon is like 5th century BC Athens is like ground zero for so much cool stuff that there's a name for this 50-year span. It's called the Pendikondaitya, right? Pendikondaitya is like the basically the best 50 years in history, going from the Persian invasion of Greece in 479 BC to the beginning of the Peloponnesian War in 431 BC. The Peloponnesian War was not a good period. But everything that led up to that, where the Greeks pushed back, they beat back.
Yeah, you got the 300 story, the Spartan. Yeah. This is Sparta. We know that didn't happen. But you have that story all the way down to Socrates, and like that's just crazy.
Yeah, you got 50 years where if you wanted to pick a period, for me, basically, if I wanted to pick a period where I would like to be alive, that was the Renaissance. That was the blossoming.
Imagine Saturday night, everyone's going to the theater to watch Euripides' Bacchae, or Aristophanes' whatever. Aeschylus a century before that. But you know what I mean. Someone later might perform Aeschylus' stuff. Still, he might be dead. You get what I'm pointing. Like, but like you're in Athens, and Plato's in the high risers with his disciples, and over there you have the general who just fought in the major war. He's over there. Over here you have this guy, and the Cynics are over here, and the Stoics are over here. And they're all just like watching this. Just imagine what it would be like.
There was something in the water. Like they were smoking something. They were doing something that was getting them to this level of
I think it's democracy.
It's democracy. Maybe it had to do with the fact that they had some slaves to do the drudgery, so that they could sit back and philosophize and study.
Partly true.
Perfect their rhetoric and produce all this great art.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely, if you're not availing yourself of the Perseus Tufts Library, which is free, has a lot of this stuff from this period, all this literature. You can read it in Greek, English, hold the English and the Greek side by side. It's like Cross Bible, but for the ancient world. Or if you can afford it, you get $100 a year subscription to the Loeb Digital Library, where you can really hold it up side by side. Like you get access to their full collection online at Loeb.com. or look up the Loeb Classical Digital Library.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're missing if you don't tap into those resources and explore.
Dude, some of these stories. All right, look, why? Honest question, right? We're all human here, but why is Game of Thrones and stuff like that so hype, right? It's the crazy shit. It's the incest. It's the death and the trickery and the like, whoa, and humans get an entertainment out of that wild shit that's in these shows. If you liked Game of Thrones, which if you don't, then this isn't for you. Just read any of the Greek myths. Just open up and find out how quickly Persephone gets abducted by Hades and is like coerced into this relationship. Or Zeus with his own daughters, his sister wives. I mean, like crazy stuff. Then you turn to the Bible, right? By the way, I'm not making this shit up. The classicist scholar that I interviewed, the only classicist that's just purely a classicist, not both and. Sarah Isles Johnston. I had her on. We talked about Genesis. We brought the Bible up, and she's like, you're onto something here. And I do agree with you. If you read from the Genesis account, you're going to find over and over, bro, incest and all sorts of sexual crap all the way through Genesis. And it's just like the Greek myths in how they do this, sexualizing their mythology over and over. So if you think Game of Thrones, then go read King David again. Then go read Genesis again. And you're going to walk away going, dude, this is some dramatic shit right here. It's really fun, you know?
I agree. People love ancient stuff too. People have like I have this like itch to go watch anything that has like an ancient setting when I'm watching Netflix or HBO. I'm always looking for like, even like Western, even if it's only 2 centuries ago. Just something about old stuff that's just fun. I don't know what it is.
Absolutely. Apostate Sisters, seriously appreciate the super chat. First time seeing your name here. Much appreciation from the sisters, Derek and Gnostic Informant. Grateful for all the scholars and important discussions you put into the world. Well, Stephen is here too now, so you're going to be seeing more of Stephen. I can promise you that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Seriously. Anything else, guys, before we wrap up?
You said it all, man. You said it all.
Nah, we didn't even begin, bro. We didn't even begin.
That's true. We just scratched the surface. By the way, Stephen, do you want to give a little preview of what we're working on a little bit, or what do you think?
A preview.
Or just like a little teaser. Like
working on so much stuff. You mean with regards to the person who refuses to say my name?
Yeah. So Stephen is the Beetlejuice to Ammon Hillman.
Yeah.
You made a giant video criticizing a lot of the stuff he pushes out there, and you never got one. We're talking about a guy who smacks the floor and is, Dan and Kipp, even I get brought up sometimes. Derek, we all get brought up. But you are special in the mind of Ammon Hillman. You are not allowed to be spoken of, which tells me I think there might be something going on. I think there's some, I think someone might be a little scared of you. I don't know. Well, anyways, we have been talking to Dr. Carl Ruck, the legend himself, and we're actually being very nuanced. By the way, we're not trying to debunk, or attack, or just shut down. We want to know. Ammon Hillman's a scholar. He's trained. He's a classicist. He knows Greek. He knows medical text. We want to know if his arguments stand up to other classicists who have been around longer than he has, who even he himself looks up to as one of the great scholars of all time. He praises Dr. Ruck. So we want to know what Ruck thinks. So we're not going to give you all the answers now, what he says, but it's very, very interesting. Very, very, you're going to enjoy what he has to say.
Yeah, I had breakfast with him last week, right? Like I was just with him last week in person here in Los Angeles. He was passing through and I gave him a visit. I messaged him after the MythVision video came out just to say, hey, we made this video. You're cited here as being the person who corroborates Dr. Hillman. I know you have like a personal connection to him. Would you like to comment on anything that I've said here? Maybe tell me if you think I'm on the right track with respect to Greek. A lot of people are questioning my credentials or lack thereof. And I got a phone call from the dude. And like just to give a little teaser, he does not want to make any public statement against Dr. Hillman. He has respect for him as a colleague. Like, he wants to be very polite and respectful, but he wants to actually make it clear what his position is on some of these things, especially when his work is being cited. So what you're about to see us break open and reveal, that was last week. So what you're going to see is basically the material that we dug up from Dr. Hillman's published work in Toxicology and Antiquity, where he is citing Dr. Ruck in his books, saying that Dr. Ruck is the source of this whole idea of the quote unquote burning purple,
the vaginal excretion, the drugs coming out of the vaginal, all that stuff.
Yeah, because that's his source. Because I'm getting people who are messaging me saying, "Oh, this is coming from Dr. Ruck. Dr. Ruck corroborates Dr. Hillman." Like, we didn't find that. We actually found the exact opposite. And I have from the horse's mouth.
Ruck was basically, if you want like a sum up of, let me take on the spirit of Ruck, and basically his response was, "Huh?"
Yeah, like, I didn't say that. Like, I mean, it's pretty striking. So, anybody who is like interested in seeing me debate Hillman, that ain't happening. Like, that's like, I put it out there. He's not going to do it. And there's a good reason. But you
want to, and he doesn't. That's what I want to make clear.
Yeah. I really, really want to, guys.
And I'm even saying I'll do it too. If it's like, he doesn't want to debate anybody that actually knows these arguments or has actually looked into them. He just wants like a clown show.
Somebody fresh out of ministry, or somebody fresh out of seminary who's just sort of like, I get it. I understand.
As if Bob Larson represents like all of the knowledge of ancient history.
Yeah, but I will say that I have changed my approach, that from the initial presentation in the MythVision video, which you guys should check out for 5 hours of fun, that the approach that I took with Derek was like, this is all so bad. There are so many errors in it. This guy must just be incompetent, right? Which is why we played around with the thumbnail of saying he flunked Greek 101. At the end of the day, after a lot more research and discussion and contemplation and reviewing this stuff with Neal and preparing for this, the Gnostic Informant video, that's going to be sort of the sequel to the MythVision video, I no longer feel that he's actually incompetent per se.
You think he's doing it on purpose?
Yeah, I think he knows better. I think he actually is. I think he's actually smart. He's a smart guy. Yeah, he knows better. He has this angle, and he has a delivery system to his followers that he knows are going to just believe him and fight to the death. Go on to that MythVision video right now and look at those comments.
I know. I get him. I told Neal before we went live just now, I was like, bro, they're still
pouring in. He has people coming out of the woodwork to just make sure that the most recent comment on that video is bashing us and in support of Hillman.
Guess what that reminds me of? It's so funny because I did a video about Ralph Ellis. Now, Ralph Ellis thinks Jesus is King Arthur. He thinks he's Darth Vader. He thinks he's all these different people from Julius Caesar, Elijah. Yeah. They're all the same person. And then this kingdom is actually this kingdom, and this person is actually this person. He just makes up his own history. He's very similar to Ammon in his methodology, where whatever his conclusion is from whatever he starts off with is just going to be his conclusion. He's just going to make it work somehow. He's just going to figure out, he's going to find the sources to make it work. That's Ralph Ellis. I did a video. I destroyed him in that video. I know for sure. Normally I wouldn't say that about like my own content, but that video, I just ripped him a new one. But I still to this very day get comments. This was so bad. You were so mean to Ralph Ellis. This is unprofessional. How would you treat Ralph Ellis like this? I can't believe you did this. And they're like, Ralph is so right. Ralph is right about this. You're wrong about that. And it's like, it's weird how much people are defending Ralph Ellis. But like, I noticed the Ammon Hillman phenomena is almost identical to Ralph Ellis.
Well, I'll show you another person that I interviewed a long time ago. Me, Robert Price, and a buddy of mine from Australia here. You see this guy in the bottom? This is Jesus. This is literally Jesus Christ reincarnated in a modern body from Australia, the cult leader in Australia.
That's who Ammon wants to be.
Bro, listen, dude, when you go to the comments, the cope, the defense, the triggered constant protection of him, and he's right, bro. It reminds me of Ammon Hillman 100%.
You weren't studying Greek for 30 plus years.
Yeah, I know. I can never catch up because I've only been doing it for 10.
It's the same comments. You can see like they're wired. They're wired in. They're saying the same things. They're going, you need the version of the pre-pubescent version in order to get the mystery right of the Yos. And you can see it's all lingo that you get only from Ammon's book. It's not from any primary sources. It's not from anything in antiquity. It's not from Euripides. It's not from Plato. It's not from anything. No Homer says. It's only from Lady Babylon. And you can see the comments, and they're repeating the same lines. It's like, it's fascinating, actually.
Well, I think what happens is in the first couple of weeks, we probably got like 15 to 20,000 views, right? That's probably mostly your audience, people who just sort of, they're like, oh, I'm in Hillman.
There's crossover, I'm sure.
There's some crossover, but then it's like, then you sort of, you get balanced comments. You get like sort of the people who are like, oh yeah, this is totally bunk. And then the people who push back and say, no, it's all true, blah, blah, blah. And they go back and forth. Then when it sort of peters out, and I think we're up to like 30 something, 40,000 views.
Right.
Then the views that are coming in and putting the recent comments, those are devotees. And those are people who are really like, they want to make sure that their comments are floating up to the top. And so it was just the other night I went in and just was wondering what was going on in that comment section. And it's pretty crazy. And you can tell that it's just, this is this influx.
They want it to be true.
Yeah.
So like,
they're Christians in a different.
It's a new call. It's a new call.
Yeah.
And by the way, I noticed I do my live streams where I'll like, I want to talk to these people. I want to understand why do you think this is the case?
Yeah.
And they'll come back to a stream from before with answers to stuff that I threw at them from 2 streams ago with a new I figured it out. I figured out why he's right. Here it is. It's like you just went and thought up with your imagination of how it could be correct.
It never ends. It makes me remember Alexander the false prophet, bro. It's like, I smell Christians. I mean, like, that's some shit he would do, bro.
He's very much like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Look,
it's an interesting phenomenon. I'm not going to lie. And I can see why people are flocking to it. But I just want my goal of the video isn't to tell you to stop following him or he's a bad person or he needs to be stopped. My goal of the video is to go, just want you guys to understand that some of the stuff that he's saying doesn't necessarily check out. Maybe some of it does. Let's look at it. I don't really care about his following or his channel. I'm not trying to shut him down.
Yeah. I'm more interested in, like you said, the misinformation and what that kind of impact has in terms of the community, because we have to eat and breathe and sleep in the same area. And when you have harassers constantly harassing with nonsense, regurgitating false information in the same area, you got to combat some of the bullshit. And that's what we're all trying to do, is say, hey, sorry, this doesn't check out. Here's what does check out, and here's why. That's pretty much the ultimate goal, is let's just get the facts straight, right? Let's not make up and go, this word can also mean this word, therefore it means this word, therefore it's always interpreted as this word everywhere we go. It's like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, we've run into some people who admit that, well, okay, well, I get that it's false. It's just so entertaining. I still want to watch the guy. It's so much fun. He's jumping up and down. Yeah, he's performative, and we love that. And we don't really care if he's making stuff up. If you're that honest, then good for you.
I've talked to dozens of people who hold that sentiment, and I have no problem with that. Cool,
Yeah.
have fun, rock out.
Well, look, people might watch Danny Jones. I mean, who wants to see DMT, UFO, alien, whistleblowers? Like, I look at that and go, that's such bullshit. I mean, like, it's so obviously conspiracy nonsense. But I'm not going to lie. There's sometimes late at night, I'll sit there and be chewing some pork rinds and going, what the hell are they saying? Listen, I entered the portal, and when I went there was a being on the other side. And you're like, yo, this is entertaining. I don't believe it, but it's entertaining, So
it's good content. It's good content.
Funny stuff. All right, guys, last words before the apocalypse occurs. I'm going to pull up your YouTube channels so that everybody knows to go subscribe.
I'll just say, go check it out, Gnostic Informant. And I got some videos coming out. And we're going to Greece next month. So we got stuff. By the way, me and Steven, not to open up a new thing, we got to close out. But we're going to visit the brand new Temple of Pan in Arcadia. Hoping.
Yeah.
It's on. Yeah. So we'll see if we can do it.
Slip them $1 bill and they'll let you through. Okay. Cross Bible as well. Stephen needs those subs, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get those numbers up. Wolf of Wall Street, this mother.
Yeah, I mean, what I need is watch hours, but I get it. I need to provide more content. But right now, I have a full history of the Old Testament, the Greek Old Testament, the story behind the King James Bible and the Textus Receptus, the history of the Codex Sinaiticus and the critical text, textual criticism, and an hour-long video on the history of English, Greek, and Hebrew, lexicography. It's all very nerdy stuff. Please go watch it. Let it play all the way through, even if it's boring. And I think, I'm going to keep putting out more and more content that's going to be focused on Bible history and the biblical text. I'm very much open to criticism. If you want to give me feedback in the comments, I appreciate the engagement, and I try to respond to comments that are coherent.
Yeah. And by the way, do us all a favor and go to Cross Bible. If you have time today, go on a device that you're not using and just open up Cross Bible and hit play and just walk away and let them go around with your day and see what it's like. Give them some watch time.
Yeah, the YouTube channel, Cross Bible Official.
Yeah, if we can get 20 people at least, or 100 people to do that right now.
Yeah, that would mean the world.
It might boost his channel a little bit.
Yeah, if you click on this longer video, the best one to click on is this one. I'll put the link in there
that
right
one
now.
Up. Exactly. Link them right now in the chat.
Even if you if you don't have the time to watch it right now, mute it, play it, let that Joker ride in the background to give him the watch time. We're trying to get him.
But that was months of research that I put into that one. Which a lot of it was kind of even surprising to me. I didn't, it was really, okay. Are you linked it? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I put together a dedicated timeline for that video. The project I'm working on now is going to be a detailed comparison between the New International Version and the New American Standard Version. Those are two of the most recent translations I got on Cross Bible. I'm working on the ESV and the NRSV updated edition to get those onto the platform, and I will make a video comparing those as well. So I know that I've seen a lot of criticism of certain Bibles. I'm going to be fair, but I'm going to draw them back to basically focusing on the New Testament translations of the Greek and just see how they hold up, because some of them are paraphrastic, they're paraphrasing, and some of them are very, very literal. And I want to sort of shed light on kind of how those work for people who don't have the ability to go back to the Greek, But if you want to go back to the Greek, hit me up. Send me an inquiry. We'll set aside like an hour a week, just enough to make you dangerous, just so you can learn how to use the tools. Even if you don't dedicate the rest of your life to it, I'd love you to. That would be great. I think everybody should dedicate the rest of their life to learning Greek, but not everybody has the time and the motivation. So I do try to motivate people.
Look, I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure that Neal feels the same way. Stephen, we really appreciate you, bro. Like, you're our friend, you're our brother. Known you for years now, man, and we're on an adventure here. We're on a journey, and this is the very, very beginning. So everybody join this journey with us. Yeah, join this journey with us. Yeah. Go subscribe and be prepared, because you guys, I'm jealous. I got 3 kids and a wife. Next month, you guys been begging me like, hey, when are you going to Greece? I just told Neal last night I'll be relocating at the end of July, and I'm hoping that we can actually put some tours together, like a MythVision Gnostic Informant tour
for next year.
Yeah, let's focus on trying to put some tours together and get together. Make some
absolutely.
Greece is a magical place.
It is,
and you know it. And you know,
we can get a tour bus together. We can do a cruise together. Let's do it. I know a bunch of people, especially people on my Patreon, that would love to be a part of that. And I'll definitely get those people in first as far as on who I can invite. But yeah,
I do, seriously, and I appreciate you, Neal. Before Stephen came in here today, I didn't know to bug you, bro. I didn't know to bug Stephen. I just was like, yo, Neal, I'm about to go on. It's been a minute. YouTube just talks about demonetizing my latest documentary that I spent, dude, like 60 days working on, from scripting to editing, and then they're talking about demonetizing it, and they're reviewing it manually to see what's going on. Now, remember, I do this full time. It's how I provide for my family. It's what I do to take care of my family, my kids, and my wife. And when they gave me that yellow sign, it was depressing. And I was just like, Neal, I'm about to go live, bro. I need to talk to my people and do a live and just reconnect. And you're like, I'll join you. And then he's like, hold on, Stephen's calling me. I was like, he hung up on me to talk to you, Stephen. I was like, get his ass on this stream now. For real, bro.
Nice. Thanks for inviting me.
This was fun.
Thank you. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do the Matrix outro. I love you. Never forget, like this, share it. Go check Steven out. Go check Neal out. And never forget, you have just attained true gnosis, and we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.